Okay. I call to order the Highland Park Board of Education Hybrid Workshop Voting Meeting today, Monday, June 23rd. The New Jersey Open Public Meetings Act was enacted to ensure the right of the public to have advance notice of and to attend the meetings of the public bodies at which any business affecting their interest is discussed or acted upon. In compliance with the Open Publics Meeting Act, the Highland Park Board of Education has caused notice of this meeting, setting forth the time, date, and location to be submitted for publication to the Home News Tribune and Courier News and posted on the board's website at least 48 hours in advance of this meeting. Members of the public who wish to address the board will be given the opportunity to do so before the board adjourns for the evening. May I have roll call, please?
Dr. Beatty, Ms. Cassell Dunn,
Here.
Dr. Coleman,
Here.
Dr. Pixley, Ms. Cruz, Dr. Schoolman, Ms. Stanio,
Here.
Ms. Barman, Ms. Voorhees.
Here.
Very well. We will now recess to executive session. Be it resolved pursuant to the Sunshine Act NJSA 10:4-12 and 13, the Highland Park Board of Education will now meet in closed session to discuss matters related to a grievance, personnel, and HIB. These exemptions are permitted to be discussed in closed session in accordance with NJSA 10:4-13. Information regarding the board's closed session discussion will be disclosed to the public as soon as the need for confidentiality no longer exists. I move that we recess to executive session.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Ready. Okay. Are you ready? Yeah. Okay. I move that we reconvene to regular session.
Anyone?
May I have roll call, please?
Dr. Beatty, Ms. Cassell Dunn,
Here.
Dr. Coleman,
Here.
Dr. Pixley,
Here.
Ms. Cruz,
Here. Here. You hear me?
Cruz,
Here.
Nothing. Her mic is muted. I'll come back to her. Dr. Schoolman,
Here.
Ms. Stanio, Ms. Vardman,
Here.
Ms. Voorhees,
Here.
Ms. Cruz,
I'm here. I don't know why you're not hearing me.
I can hear Mary Lynn. I don't know if you guys can.
Yeah. I'm here. I don't know.
And can you?
Dr. Schoolman,
Here. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Nope.
Uh-oh. That's a
Okay.
problem.
hang tight. Can you fix that? Oh, Ms. Cruz?
Here.
Thought I heard her.
Yeah, Dr. Schoolman says he's speaking, but we can't
Can you
hear
hear-
him.
Can you hear me now? No,
Can you hear us? Can you hear me?
I don't think they can hear us, Marilyn.
Sorry for the delay.
Volume of the computer on, is that the issue or no? I'm speaking into the microphone. Can you pick that up?
But that's a problem because we have a lot of people on for public comment tonight. And you're, you know. Marilyn, can you say here?
Here. Can you hear me?
Yeah. All right, we're gonna close the Zoom and reopen it. Hopefully that'll address the audio problems.
Test, test.
Can you hear me now? I'm back.
Yeah, right. What about Dr. Schoolman? Can we hear you? Oh.
I'm here. I was muted. Can you hear me now?
Yay! All
Yay.
right.
Nice job.
Marilyn, say here.
I'm here.
All right, stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic to stand one nation, God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is the public hearing to extend or alter the superintendent's contract. At this time, we will have public comment on the superintendent's contract only. The Highland Park Board of Education welcomes public participation and has reserved this time for your comments. Board policy number 0167 establishes and regulates the right of the public to participate in public meetings. Is there anybody in person for public comment regarding the superintendent's contract? Angelo, how many people do we have online? Is there anybody on Zoom for public comment regarding the superintendent's contract? Please raise your hand. And with no hands raised, we will close that public comment. We will now recess to executive session. Be it resolved pursuant to the Sunshine Act, NJSA 10:4-12 and 13, the Highland Park Board of Education will now meet in closed session to discuss matters. Oh, this is not right. Regulars. To discuss superintendent's contract. These exemptions are permitted to be discussed in closed session in accordance with NJSA 10:4-13. Information regarding the board's closed session discussion will be disclosed to the public as soon as the need for confidentiality no longer exists. I move we recess to executive session.
Second.
All in favor? We'll be right back. I move that we reconvene to regular session.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Dr. Beatty. Ms. Cassel Dunn.
Here.
Dr. Coleman.
Here.
Dr. Pixley.
Here.
Ms. Prus.
Here.
Dr. Schoolman.
Here.
Ms. Stanio.
Here.
Ms. Bardman.
Here.
Ms. Voorhees.
Here.
Okay. So now we have the resolution of the Highland Park Board of Ed to enter into the contract that would be dated July 1st, 2022 through July 30th, 2027, to rescind that contract and enter into a new 5-year contract to begin July 1st, 2025. Now therefore be it resolved that with the consent of Dr. Christina Suska, the Board of Ed hereby rescinds her current employment contract, and with the approval of the Executive County Superintendent of Schools, in accordance with NJAC 6A:23A-3.1, the Board of Ed approves a new 5-year contract of employment with Dr. Christina Suska, effective July 1st, 2025 through June 30th, 2030, in accordance to the terms and conditions therein. This new contract shall supersede and replace the 2022-2027 contract that we have rescinded, and be it fully resolved that the board president is authorized to execute the contract on behalf of the board as per attached. Okay, I'd like to move,
Letter F, action.
I'd like to move letter F.
Second.
Ms. Cassel Dunn.
Yes.
Dr. Coleman.
Yes.
Dr. Pixley.
Yes.
Ms. Prus.
Yes.
Dr. Schoolman.
Yes.
Ms. Stanio.
Yes.
Ms. Bardman.
Yes.
Ms. Voorhees.
Yes.
Congratulations, Dr. Suska. You are stuck with us for another 5 years.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. It's a real honor. Thank you.
Okay, number 9 is the communications. We had 1 with no subject, 3 regarding the field trip, the out-of-state field trips, and 1 about the Pride Month flag raising. And now we'll move on to our student representative. Oh, I'm sorry, I missed 1 down at the bottom. Number 10 is the approval of minutes, hybrid voting minutes and executive session from May 27th, 2025. I move that we approve those minutes.
Second. Ms. Cassel Dunn.
Yes.
Dr. Coleman.
Yes.
Dr. Pixley.
Yes.
Ms. Prus.
Yes.
Dr. Schoolman. Dr. Schoolman. Ms. Stanio.
Yes.
Ms. Bardman.
Yes.
Ms. Voorhees.
Yes.
Okay. Now we move on to our student representative report. Seth?
All right, well, we don't have a student representative report. We do have 2 new student representatives, though, that are going to be joining us next year. Lami couldn't be here in person, but Bree is. She's going to be one of our new student representatives next year. They've both been very participating and active members in Student Congress this year, and they interviewed, and I wasn't able to be there, but Anna said they did well, and Mr. Mladnick selected them to be our student representatives next year.
Awesome. Welcome. Okay, we're going to move on to the superintendent's report.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'm going to make my way over to the podium. Thank you. Test. All right, we're good. First, I'd like to take a moment to extend a heartfelt welcome and recognize some very special members of our school community tonight. This is such a wonderful time that we have now twice a year to recognize and celebrate the service of our retirees, whose years of commitment have helped shape the success of our students and the strength of our district. Your impact is long-lasting, and we thank you deeply. We also honor our student board representatives tonight, whose voices have brought insight, leadership, and a strong reminder of why we do this work. Thank you all for being here as we celebrate these important milestones and the people behind them. I would first like to call up our esteemed principal at Bartle, Ms. Jennifer Knapp, to the podium.
Good evening, everyone. I'm short, I'm sorry. It's always an honor to be here to speak about our staff members. I am going to begin with May Lewis. She could not be here today. Unfortunately, she is sick. I did send her what I'd be saying, but I want to honor her here as well. Today, we come together to celebrate the retirement of someone very special to Bartle School, the one and only May Lewis. After 25 remarkable years in education, May is closing this chapter of her professional journey. And while we are excited for what lies ahead for her, we will deeply feel the absence of her wisdom, warmth, and unwavering dedication. As a teacher, and more recently, our reading interventionist, May has touched the lives of countless students, guiding them to discover the joy and power of reading. For so many students, May has been the one who helped them take those first courageous steps towards literacy, meeting them with patience, skill, and a deep belief that every child can succeed. Her work has not only changed academic outcomes, it has changed lives. But May's impact extends far beyond her students. She has been a generous and supportive colleague, always willing to share her expertise through professional development workshops, offering her time and talents to help others grow and develop. Whether leading sessions on literacy strategies or simply offering a thoughtful suggestion in the hallway, May has made all of us better educators. And of course, we can't talk about May without mentioning the calm and mindfulness she brought to Bartle. With the creation of our yoga club, May didn't just teach yoga, she gave our school a way to breathe, to slow down, and to reconnect. She brought Zen to Bartle. May, your legacy is etched in every child you helped read, every colleague you supported, and every person who left your yoga sessions feeling just a little more at peace. Bartle is better because of you. We thank you for your 25 years of service, your unmatched dedication, and the love you've poured into the school community. Enjoy this next chapter filled with rest, reflection, joy, and plenty of yoga. You've earned every moment. Congratulations on your retirement. You will always be part of the Bartle family. And now I'd like to honor Lene Nagy. Today we gather to honor someone whose quiet strength, generosity, and unwavering support have left a lasting imprint on our school community. A dedicated paraprofessional for 27 years, Lene has not only served generations of students, but has also been a trusted teammate and constant source of support for educators throughout the district. I've had the privilege of knowing Lene since my early days as a first grade teacher at Irving School. Even then, her willingness to step in and lend a hand without hesitation stood out. Lene has always been someone you could count on. Throughout her nearly 3 decades of service, Lene has worked with countless students, but just as profoundly, she has supported her colleagues. She has been the reassuring voice in moments of uncertainty, and the helping hand whenever and wherever she is needed. Her colleagues have always known that Lene has their backs. As principal, I have been fortunate to see Lene's impact from a different perspective. She doesn't seek the spotlight. She simply shows up and does the work that matters. Your departure is bittersweet because while we will miss you dearly, we are excited for all that this next chapter holds for you. 3 decades is a long time. May your retirement be filled with the same joy, peace, and warmth you've so generously shared with all of us. On behalf of the entire school community, we thank you, Lene. You've made a difference in ways words can hardly capture. Congratulations on your well-deserved retirement. You'll always be a dolphin.
I'd now like to call up our esteemed high school principal, Dr. Christina Donovan.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to speak about Miss Zimmer, a gem as bright as the jewelry she hand makes all the time at Highland Park High School. Tonight, we gather to celebrate the remarkable career of Miss Zimmer, who has left her unique and impactful mark on our school community as she steps into a well-deserved retirement. Miss Zimmer's heart has always been in the library, her favorite place in our building. For over 13 years, she shared not only lunch duty, but also a closet, yes, a closet, with the wonderful Miss Puccio, creating memories filled with laughter. These moments in the library weren't just about supervision, they were about building connections with students, fostering a love for learning, and making the media center a welcoming haven. Ms. Zimmer has spent countless hours in our cafeteria and our auditorium, supporting our students while they have been in study hall. She greets students with a smile and ensures they are supervised with care. Her dedication extended far beyond our school walls. Ms. Zimmer hosted the Chess Club, Rubik's Cube Club, and the African American Culture Club. Examples of her amazing contribution were taking the African American Culture Club on unforgettable class trips, both to Washington and to New York City, broadening students' horizons and sparking their curiosity. During Black History Month, her talks in the Media Center were a highlight, inspiring students with her passion for history and her commitment to improving their lives. Her pursuit of growth never stopped. She eagerly attended professional developments at the Rutgers Law Center and always sought ways to better serve out our students. Ms. Zimmer, you've been more than a coworker and a paraprofessional to staff and students. You've been a colleague, a confidant, and a friend whose presence will be deeply missed. Your warmth, your wisdom, your random Irish brogue, and an unwavering dedication have shaped countless lives. As you turn the page in this new chapter, we wish you joy, adventure, and all the time you need to explore your passions, perhaps with a good book from your beloved library while riding the rails across America or Canada. Congratulations on an extraordinary career, and here's to a retirement filled with happiness. You deserve it.
Thank you, Ms. Snap and Dr. Donovan. And I get the honor of celebrating our student representatives, and it's with great pride and gratitude that we recognize these two outstanding young leaders in our school community, Anna Jurisic and Seth Shapiro. Serving as a student representative on the Board of Education is no small responsibility. It requires dedication, thoughtful insight, and a true commitment to representing the voices of their peers with integrity and passion. Anna and Seth, your willingness to step into this role demonstrates a remarkable sense of civic engagement and leadership at such a formative time in your lives. You have been the link between the student body and our district's leadership team, ensuring that perspectives and concerns of your classmates are heard and considered in our decision-making process. Your contributions have enriched our conversations and helped shape decisions that impact every student in our schools. Whether it was attending meetings, preparing thoughtful questions, or sharing your honest feedback, you have modeled the kind of active participation that strengthens our community and helps us grow together. On behalf of the entire district, thank you for your commitment, your courage to speak up, and your dedication to serving your peers. You are setting an inspiring example of what it means to be an engaged citizen and compassionate leaders. We have no doubt that the skills and values you've demonstrated will continue to serve you well in all your future endeavors. Please join me in giving a warm round of applause to Anna and Seth for their exemplary service to our school district. Anna isn't with us tonight, but maybe Seth, could you accept her award too on her behalf? Thank you. Thank you again. And just another round of applause for our retirees and our student representatives. The African proverb, "It takes a village," is an understatement, given the magnitude of what we heard here tonight. So I would like to pause in my superintendent's report now for a brief interlude so that we can celebrate our retirees and our student representatives with some light refreshments. We'd like to take a couple of pictures, and then we'll convene back to finish my report. Thank you. I'll finish my report. She's talking to Ms. Stevenson.
Oh, she's there talking. Oh,
when Ms. Voorhees is done, we'll it's really engrossed. Start again. Okay. All right. Thank you. I appreciate everyone's celebration of such a great occasion. So lastly, on my report, I wanted to just give some brief updates regarding the discussion around out-of-state overnight field trips. I know that's been a hot topic. I've sent out several communications, but I wanted just to give a couple of talking points. I probably recognize that a lot of people are gathered today to express some concerns and some excitement over trips that they've been on. So just to kind of reorient everyone, after the 2025-2026 budget was passed, we received a request for an overnight out-of-state field trip. So what happened was during the budget season, if you listen back through December, there were conversations regarding the amount of money through the district operating budget that student trips that the district had to fund in a very tight budget season that we had to cut a number of different things. Unfortunately, the district operating budget could not sustain the ongoing costs. So after the budget was passed, I received a request for an overnight out-of-state field trip. I was not able to approve that request because it was an unbudgeted item. So we put a pause on this trip to have a conversation to figure out what we were going to do since we couldn't fund it. The discussion on budgeting in the operational funds for the field trips for out-of-state and out-of-country only was about the funding for that in particular is about the incidental payments that have to be done or incidental funds that have to be done to fund trips. So in the past, some of the operating budget was covering hotels, meals, air travel, things like that. And those were items including the cost of the actual chaperones and now administrators to attend those trips. So understanding that administrators have to go and chaperones go in terms of the cost for them to attend, that's what the district was picking up some of or most of those funds for certain trips. But some new requests were coming in for trips that we hadn't supported in the past either. So communication went out to staff. And upon reflecting on the two communications that went out, obviously looking at better ways to communicate that information. However, we had to definitely put a pause on it because we were getting the requests and we couldn't just say no without providing some sort of explanation or some way to support them in that moment. So right now, and we currently have been doing a full analysis at looking at what those costs are to the operating budget. So what is an all-in cost for a trip to run? So right now, for example, I think it was just this past year, the district put out about $40,000 in field trips and about 14 to 15,000 of it were for, I'm sorry, this was last year, was for overnight out-of-state trips. This year, we've estimated about, at this point, 11,000 for out-of-state trips and overnight trips. That's where we're at, but we're not finished with our analysis only because it's very nuanced. The funds come in and go out in two different platforms, student funds and operating budget. So we're looking through those particular areas to find out what was a district operating cost versus a student fund cost. And what I mean by a student fund cost is that the students pick up the tab. So when you pay to go on a trip, that your cost of your trip, does it include just your cost to go, or is it your cost plus some of the incidentals involved in that trip to fund chaperones and things like that? So with that said, the cost of a trip, which is also what we have to look at, is not only the incidentals, the cost of the chaperones to go. There's collective bargaining agreement needs that we have to do. We have to adhere to when paying for staff to attend overnight and out-of-state trips, as well as administrators. That's a new cost to the district as well through the collective bargaining agreement and district policy. We have to pay for substitute costs if it's needed for teachers, nurses, and paraprofessionals to attend. So that's something that we're looking into factoring into. How much does that cost? Our sub costs have been extraordinarily high this year. The potential need for an insurance rider. An insurance rider is an additional insurance policy that goes above and beyond what ours normally will include. And that is included for any trip over 2 days long. So when a request comes in, the request goes to our insurance carrier, and the insurance carrier looks through it to decide if an additional rider is needed or not. If it is needed, it tells us the cost, and then we have to fund that cost. So those are sort of back end costs that aren't necessarily seen when we're talking about an all-in cost for operating these trips. So that's why we're still doing a further analysis to figure it out. So for example, there was the insurance carrier did deem it necessary for at least one known trip recently that they had to have the insurance rider. Again, administrative costs, our administrators are not chaperones on the trip as per policy in the collective bargaining agreement. And this was a new added expense and rate. And then again, like I said, for all of these people, your administration and your staff to attend the trips. So what we had to do when trying to look at all of those costs was to create a balanced budget that had the least amount of impact on student instruction, knowing that there were particular areas that we wanted to support within the budget. So again, we decided to limit the board's financial contributions, but not to ban them altogether. So trying to figure out ways that we could continue to support overnight out-of-state field trips, as they are a really great opportunity for our students, but doing it in a way that was financially feasible for the operating budget. So we are exploring options and researching ways that student funds can absorb more of those costs. So like I said, we're doing an analysis to scrutinize the requests and costs associated with each trip. That way we have a list so that if a staff member puts in a request, they know how much an all-in cost for student funds would be to hold that particular trip. So for example, we're looking at, could student funds cover hotel, flight, registration, and meals for chaperones? And then the district operating budget could sustain the cost of the per diem rate for our staff to attend. So student funds would pick up potentially for the chaperones and administrator to travel, to stay in a hotel, all of that kind of stuff, attend a museum or whatever those payments are, those fees, and then the district operating budget to pay for the per diem rate under the collective bargaining agreement and policy for those staff to attend. We're also looking into seeing if we can take advantage of a third-party travel agency to assist with booking travel, which would be then covered under student funds. So student funds would then potentially pay a travel agency for the cost of the trip. And this may be a more cost-effective solution, given the fact that travel agencies sometimes have a little bit more negotiating or bargaining power and leverage to fund a trip. They may have other options or coverage under their insurance policies that may or may not allow us to get a rider. Again, those are things that we're exploring, and every trip is going to be different. And one of the things that we don't want to do is limit the amount of trips that we're going on. The trip that came across my desk was one that we hadn't budgeted in the past at all for. And we want to create a model that's sustainable, that's open to every club and organization in the district that would want to take an overnight out-of-state trip. So what we want to do is rethink the model so it's sustainable. And like I said, that gives everybody access to attend a trip, not just a small select a group of clubs, so that any club could potentially want to go, could go. I've already met with several staff to plan around the new model. So we're finalizing the list of budgeting cost items, like I said. We're reviewing the law under what things can be funded. So we are guided by some law, because there are some legal issues regarding what student funds can pay for and what the operating budget can pay for. So we want to make sure we get all of that right. And that timeline for requests to determine insurance costs. So because we have to send every trip to the insurance company to be scrutinized to see if there's a rider or not, we have to figure out what the timeline is. So we'll work with the insurance carriers to say, what's the turnaround time? What does this look like? Then giving it to the club to say, here's how much a rider would cost, to roll that into the cost of the student funds as well. And then researching the potential for an approval of a third-party travel agency, which could assist with organizing the travel and potentially be cheaper for the students. Because that's something we're being really mindful of as well, with a potential rethought process of the model is that it's also financially sustainable because the costs of everything are rising, and we want to make sure we're mindful of that for our students and student funds as well. So the plan is to have this all done over the summer so that the upcoming school year, the students will be able to enjoy their trips. So that's my office and the business office are working feverishly to have that list of items. We are chipping away really quickly as best as we can, given end of year constraints. And then hopefully by the end of July, that should all be finalized. We'll send it out for a lot of input and review. And then in August, we should have that finalized. That way we can kick off the school year with that sustainable model for all students to have access. I'll open the floor up to the board for any questions or comments.
I have a clarifying question for the new model. I mean, obviously, there's going to need to be further discussion, and, you know, please know we are really working hard on this. But to clarify, students would be able to attend these competitions as Highland Park
Correct.
students,
Yes.
and teachers would be there officially, correct?
Yes, correct.
I have a quick question regarding like the budget and the money. If you have it, I was wondering if you have like a percentage or share that for the overnight trips that's being paid for by the students and the club through fundraising and the students' individual tickets, and then the portion that the district would be paying for?
So I don't have that yet, but that's what we're finalizing now so that we know what is currently being done and then what does the new model look like to support whatever that difference is.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, Ethan?
Hi, yeah, thanks, Dr. Suska. I really appreciate the deep dive. True to type. I know you guys are taking this really seriously. It's a kind of a comment. I mean, I think I really respect the idea that the ability to go on overnight field trips shouldn't be available just to the biggest clubs, the most established clubs that have historically done it. If you start a new organization, or there's an organization or a club in school that has just a handful of students, that club is as important to those students as the bigger clubs is to the bigger audiences. And so they should have every right to have their requests considered. So I think that's a perfectly valid consideration. It makes a lot of sense. We should keep that in the balance. At the same time, some of these more established clubs, you have a substantial percentage of students in the school. I think I was reading online, not the greatest source, but DECA, for instance, I saw in one source, 20% of students in the high school are involved in DECA. That may or not be exact. That's a lot. And, as important it is to consider the balance of ability for the small clubs, per student, we have to think about that as well. And so I think there has to be a balance between making sure that clubs that are established have really very well organized students are, this is a big part of the culture of the schools. And a lot of parents and students count on being able to go abroad, go overnight with these things. That also has to weigh. It shouldn't be not considered just because the other considerations are important. So I hope we're taking that into account too.
I was going to say something that kind of piggybacks off of what Ethan was saying, is that some of these trips that we have funded in the past require a qualification, right? It's a competition. They're earning the right to be there. So I think that we also have to take that into consideration, where there are events that do have certain criteria that you need to meet in order to go to these competitions or to these conferences. And so that might carry a little bit more weight as opposed to other trips, not to discourage other trips. And I think that there are other organizations and student clubs that could benefit from, also having those opportunities to earn placements in out-of-state competitions or conferences or whatever they are called. But I do think that is an important element of some of these clubs, is that competition factor, is the fact that they earn it. And so that's something to keep in our minds.
Yeah, just to kind of also provide some context on that, I do really agree with that. Although I think another important factor is the value of the trip in terms of culture. A lot of these trips, the purpose is like when we go, I've been very lucky to be able to go on some of these out-of-state trips for Model UN, and a lot of the main focus is on, when we go to places like Mexico, is learning the culture there. So I think that's another thing. Well, there might be not an official competition. People are selected based off their performance previously to attend. And with DECA, I know while 20% of the school does participate, I think only about 10 to 15 students qualify on state levels to get to go to those out-of-state trips. So I think while competition is very important, and it's something that DECA does well of really qualifying a lot of people, which is great. Also, the cultural value, because I think with clubs like the African American Culture Club, there's not competitions to go on those trips. But Miss Sim was here earlier, and they've gone on some great trips, I've heard, to New York City and DC. So I think also the cultural value of these trips is something that should be really considered too.
And I think concurrent clubs also apply to go on these trips. I don't think we're limiting it. We haven't really, they haven't really come across our desk yet, right?
Well,
That
they have, and
have?
that's why I
So we're
had to
not always
decline them
approving.
because we didn't budget for them.
Okay.
So that's some other information
Okay.
that, we're kind of unpacking and looking at as well.
These two clubs, even though they're well established and really big, they are open to all kids.
Correct.
That they
Yes.
could, apply, not even apply, they could just join the clubs and try to register for the competitions. But totally unrelated, one thing I was really concerned about was that, like Allison asked before, we can do this with our school name. Can teachers use their email addresses? Can teachers, will they get paid time off for this? Or do they have to use their own like vacation days to go on a trip?
Right.
That was a big concern. that came across.
Everything under the revised model will still allow those same things. The revised model is just looking at putting more of the financial requirements on student funds and less on the district operating budget to make it a more sustainable model for all students to have access and all clubs to have access. So that just might require some of the student fund organizations to just do more fundraising and things like that, or a higher parent paid model.
And like you were saying, a lot of these decisions will be made over the summer. So kids will know going into next school year, if they want to join DECA, it's because
Yes.
this trip still
Yes.
exists. or
So there,
you have-
all of those things are going to happen. The trips will still be there. It's just going to be just a revised model of what it looked like.
Another thing I wanted to mention was Model UN. Some of the trips are bigger than others, and I know that those are limited. They'll do Mexico, for example. That's once every 4 years. They do that on purpose. It's not every year that they're doing the really, really big trips. And DECA, the same thing. I think every other year is California, and then it's Florida. So those, as you're looking at the budgets over the years, sometimes there's a big difference between what we're spending.
Right. And we don't know sometimes too, but that's also part of it is from a budget perspective, we don't know then how much that might cost the operating budget to predict. I mean, a part of the revised model, is it could be people putting in and we a whole year and change ahead. I mean, we look at the budget, we start budgeting in the fall and winter, right? And so it's like we would have to kind of know things really far ahead to be able to put it in the operating budget for an upcoming school year. So in the revised model, it could be open to a group saying, we'd like to do this and here is our request, because we would have in the operating budget just the per diem for the staff to go and the administrators, their per diem cost, right? And then everything else that we could put onto student funds under the model would then be student funds. So then we would get the request on the trip, we'd reach out to the insurance company then could say, a rider is needed, no rider is needed. If a rider is needed, it's $3,500. Okay, then to the group, $3,500 is needed for the rider to do this, because in a model in which we don't know those costs, it's hard to predict them, to budget for them. So then we would say, okay, here is your all-in cost to run this trip, divided by the number of students that you have and chaperones that you might need and administrators. And then this is the cost per student to go on this trip. If that makes sense.
I kind of want to pick it back off
Yeah.
that last one is so I appreciate all these trips, these opportunities that these trips give all of our students. And with that, we do have a very diverse community financially as well. Is this something that we take into consideration? Like a lower income student who wants to go on these trips, do we take that into consideration when we make the decision?
We do. Well, not when we make the decision. All of them get passed. When they come to my desk, I don't deny one. If we have the budget for something, I don't deny it. What happens now with all of them is the student funds covers that cost. and they will provide a reduced rate for our students that qualify for free and reduced lunch, or they fundraise. So they fundraise to try to offset that cost, or they put a larger amount of the paying model onto the full paying people. So the full paying students that'll go. So I'm not sure what a most recent trip would cost, but let's say it would cost $500 a person. A free or reduced student might pay half of that, $250. But then then if there's 10 students that are going, I have to factor in that amount of money and divide that up amongst the full paying people to attend. So that's our model now, and we would continue that absolutely. We wouldn't want any student to be left out because they couldn't afford to go.
And we know of other districts that use these travel agencies. Can you speak a little bit to that?
Sure, yeah. So I was in a district in particular that used the travel agency to travel out of the state overnight. I know that Mr. Rosa was in a district that did. And then actually one of our own staff members who runs one of these clubs that is working collaboratively with me shared one as well. So we have at least 3 that we know are vetted. That we can use. So like I said, we are working collaboratively, myself and staff and Mr. Rosa and the board, to work feverishly to redefine the model and look through those. So we have 3, and I was really excited. Some of the staff brought some to our attention too. They said, "Oh, we use this one. We really like them. They're really great. Can we approve those?" So one of the things would be to consider a board approving like a couple of select travel agencies that then they could pick from to be able to help support that. Especially for our trips that maybe a larger amount of students go on for sure.
And just to reiterate, using a third-party travel agency, it would still be a Highland Park Public Schools event.
Correct. Because we would also approve those travel agencies as like vendors for us. The check to the travel agency is paid out of student funds, not out of the operating cost. But the chaperone going or the administrator going would get money in their paycheck from the Highland Park Public Schools, because we would be picking up their per diem collective bargaining rate.
I have a question about administrators. Is that something we could maybe change, that an administrator would count as one of the chaperones? I think
That is
could
part of the
maybe put it in
collective
that.
bargaining process.
Okay.
So we
right
would
now
have
it's just
to,
an extra person versus one of the current.
correct. So you would have to work with the administrative team through the collective bargaining process.
Okay.
Okay. We're taking public comment in a few minutes. Thank you.
Yeah, I was just going to say so it sounds like to me, would just kind of like to sum it up, that the final thing that you're working on is the model, but you're going to be able to resolve solving for this kind of part that has unpredictable costs. And it's just a matter of how we solve that problem for how that those finances are kind of reabsorbed by the student.
Correct.
So it's just you're working through those details.
We have that list going, and we're in the final works. Hopefully, again, the plan is to have that list of those things by the end of June, and then early July is sort of what those costs are, so we can look at them, and work and look at the travel agent companies. So by the end of July, all that will be wrapped up and presented to the board at the end of the month. We'll have some conversations around that. And then in August, nothing has to be finalized or passed or approved, but just so that we're communicating clearly, so that in August, that information can go out to our staff when they welcome back to say, hey, welcome back. Really the beginning of September, welcome back. And here is our revised model of what this looks like. So now you can, feel free to submit your requests, knowing that these are things that you have to consider for the cost of your trips.
And then this would solve kind of the what you brought up earlier, which is having to decline things. Because it
Correct.
wasn't in the budget. So it allows for a little more innovation
Yes.
in what we want to do to test new things out. And,
Yes.
And there's a model to do it.
Yep.
Okay. Great.
You're welcome.
Can I ask one more clarifying question?
Sure.
I think the idea of administrators, the new requirement for administrators and the idea behind collective bargaining and the policy change is a little unclear, because that kind of, did you spill?
It was rolling away, sorry.
Because that kind of all unfolded over the course of this last year in kind of pieces. So we revised the field trip policy. And in that, it stipulates that an overnight out-of-state trip requires an administrator.
Correct. For
Correct.
liability purposes.
For
That was something that
liability
was very
purposes.
important.
It's very important. So that administrator now within the new contract that was negotiated with administration has a reimbursement, has some sort of payment for
Correct.
that supervision and that
Correct.
kind of some of the new numbers that we're working with.
Correct. So that is now the cost. So that was part of that. So the policy says we want an administrator has to go on a trip that's overnight and out of state. It actually, if you read the policy, there's two components. There's an on-call one. So if it's an in-state overnight trip, an administrator is on call. So if there's an emergency, a disciplinary issue, something that's happening, an administrator volunteers themselves to be on call. It could be me, it could be Dr. Donovan, it could be Dr. Richardson, it could be Miss Brady, Miss Knapp, an administrator. And then if we were called to the site, whether it's the Hyatt or something like that, we would go and then attend to whatever the issue was. The policy, the second part of that is that if there is an out-of-state overnight trip, an administrator must accompany them on there. That policy change then came with a conversation and a collective bargaining agreement with the Highland Park Administrative Association to pay them a per diem rate. Same thing, if our teachers attend an overnight out-of-state trip, in their collective bargaining agreement, they have a per diem rate that they get paid as well. Right now, based on the collective bargaining agreement, that per diem rate is to be an administrator only, not a chaperone. So like I said, if that's something that you want to collectively bargain, we can start having conversations around that. Okay. All right. Thank you. That concludes my report.
All right. So we're going to move to the first public comment of today's meeting. The Highland Park Board of Education welcomes public participation and has reserved this time for your comments. We do know there's a lot of people to speak tonight, so if we could limit our comments to 3 minutes, which is what we usually do, but we are not limiting the time that we take comments. So it's just, we're going to kind of warn you close to 3 minutes to wrap up. But we're going to take comments for as long as people want to comment. And then there's a second public comment period after we go through our committee reports as well. All right. So is there anybody in person for public comment? You're going to go to the podium, sign in with your name. And if you're a student, you don't have to announce your name, but we do need it to be signed in, correct? Is that it? Oh, you don't have to give your address. You have to give your name. You don't have to give your address. Thank you. Is there anybody for in-person public comment? And there's a piece of paper there. You can, yeah.
Okay, so I heard you guys talking about like the travel agencies, but I guess like the way that I've learned about them is that it's its own like agency. It's trying to sell its own trip or expedition. So for the, I guess, diverse trip that I went on, the cultural trip I went on for Model UN, we were able to talk with like a variety of different people that specifically Dr. Adam Gold was able to set up with us. Like being able to meet somebody from the OAS, from various other things. We were able to learn a bunch of stuff, but my like main concern with these travel agencies is that it's going to like prevent us from doing this because they're trying to sell their own trip, their own experience, and that's what we would be paying for. We'd be paying for their experience with time to go to conferences, which is a huge part of Model UN, but I think another really big part of our club is being able to talk with people that we might not be able to talk with normally. When we went to DC, we were able to talk with people that sure we could get on a call and talk with them, but it was a lot more pressing to be able to go up and to talk to them and to learn about something that we wouldn't normally learn about and to learn about different things that we didn't normally learn about. As well as the administrators, I'm a little confused on, I guess, why exactly they have to be there, if there's a specific law that makes them be there. And also this whole thing with the reduced trips, the reduced whatever, it was very unclear to the students. Many different teachers and parents were sent out various emails, but us students were given nothing. The only thing that we were truly given was an article written in the Fling which was an interview between Arden and Dr. Siska. So I think the main things that we want is more clarity, more transparency with the student body, because there was many rumors flying around that trips would be banned totally, that things would be reduced completely, and that students would have to take on whatever. And it was just very confusing in like the students' point of view. We're going around school and we're hearing various rumors, and it's not helping us in any way. We're just getting more confused. And it was a whole thing, but yeah, that's my main concerns. I know other people have other things as well, but yeah.
Thank you.
Hello, everybody. My name is Joseph Liu. I will be a junior next school year. I have been an active member of Model UN for both of the 2 years that I've been in high school. And within my class, the class of 2027, I have been on the most conferences of anybody. I believe to date, I have been to 9 Model UN conferences, and the most impactful ones have always been the out-of-state trips. There's something about the immersiveness of these trips, the ability to interact with these people whose jobs are so pressing for our international relations, whose cultures are so different from ours, and who understand the world in such a different way from us. For example, in our Washington trip, we were able to talk to people who work for the American Society of International Law, people who actively participated in the creation and research of this. And we were also able to talk to people in the Stimson Center, which is a think tank, I believe, also for international relations. In our Mexico trip, we were able to visit the National Museum for, I believe it was anthropology, and we learned a lot about the culture of Mexico and a lot about a world that was completely different from ours. The point I'm trying to make is that these trips are extremely valuable for students, for the education of these students. We only learn so much in school. There's only so much you can learn from looking at a packet or reading online. There's only so much that you can get from a textbook. But being in person with these people, being able to talk to them, and being able to connect with them as people has allowed many of us to expand our educational horizons so much more than we ever could have imagined. I'd like to ask for you to maybe attempt to reconsider putting board funding back into these trips. It's much easier for us to have these trips. It's much easier for us to talk about these trips. And for a lot of people, it'd be really helpful to be able to go on trips that they can much more easily afford. Thank you.
Thank you.
No pen.
You need a pen? And for our non-students, we're just going to ask name and address.
I'm Robert Katz, 299B South 11th. I'll keep my remarks short because I know there's a lot of people virtually that'll be speaking about this as well. I'm going to speak from my perspective on a couple of remarks. My son is in the 12 plus GLOW program. He's been involved with DECA for 5 years now. And I can't say enough about DECA. I know the kids work extremely hard in all their competitions, both the regional and in-state, and as well as preparing for the out-of-state competitions. They spend a lot of time, both the kids and the advisors spend a lot of time of their own time, as well as in school time fundraising for these trips. I know for a fact that they go to like the street fair, they'll do other fundraising on their own time to help fund these trips, which I think are very important both academically as well as socially. I know especially for, and I shouldn't say especially for, but I know as far as my son's concerned and his friends in the GLOW program that actually do qualify for both the in-state as well as the out-of-state trips. It's a very big social opportunity for them as well to experience the whole thing. Financially, I'm concerned with this new model that the price of these trips are going to be increasing potentially significantly for the kids, which is going to either, and my worry would be that would particularly preclude some students from attending who ordinarily would be able to attend, or I mean, it would also require potentially significantly more fundraising, which may or may not be possible on the students group from the student groups. I do. So I really hope that you would reconsider changing the current policy, keeping it status quo. I am a teacher, a public school teacher. So I do know a little bit how budgeting works, and I do know that budgets for the next year are started in the fall of the previous year. So I'm a little confused as to why you can't postpone new requests till the following year. So if you receive new trip requests after the budget process has already been started, instead of changing your policy that year, right, and affecting those groups who already have their trips approved for that year, why it's not possible to push it to the next year. So for example, if they requested for this coming year, which budget was already finalized, just push it for the year after next. I just don't think it's fair to penalize the student groups that have their trip requests in on time for the current budget to be penalized for those student trips that are requested after the budget process has already been started. Not that they shouldn't be allowed to have their own trips, but I think it needs to be factored into everything.
Thank you. Anybody else in person for public comment?
Hi, my name is Andrew. I'm going to be a junior next year at Highland Park High School. I'm raising a similar concern to the previous speaker. He talked about the affordability of these trips and how the students that were going on these trips in these clubs already will be able to afford them next year if the school board is contributing less. You talked a little bit about the fairness between clubs and having smaller clubs, giving them the opportunity as well to go out of state, and also bringing in maybe third-party sources to help organize these trips. But my understanding of these third-party organizations is that they would most likely be more expensive for the students and provide a less opportunity for these students to get the same academic experiences that they have had previously. So I guess my main concern is that the school board cannot maintain the same experience for these students with a new plan if less people will be able to afford it.
Okay. Our next in-person public comment?
My name is Lisa. I'm Maria's mom. She's gonna be a junior. Oh, do I say my address? 416 South 8th Avenue. Everything that they've said, I'm very concerned about. Also, I'm very concerned about the lack of clarity in the school districts. We hear all of this and it's like, okay, well, we ask questions and it's very vague. So my main concern is, why do administration Why do they need to be on these trips? Is there a state law? If so, why wasn't this implemented before? But also, if it's not a state law, can we go around it, not have the administrators have the regular chaperones that they're used to? And that way it cuts costs, because I can tell you that with all the trips that my child goes on, plus, wanting to do the SATs, and we're looking at colleges soon, and, God willingly, I have a son that's going to be doing Middlesex. It adds up, and I am a mother of 3. So there's one salary, 3 kids. And I want her to experience all these trips, but she can't experience them if you guys are gonna raise the trips, the prices to it. So what are we gonna do about it is my main concern and question. And also I want you guys to understand how educational these trips are. Maya came back from Washington, DC, and it's not even just Maya, I'm sure the other kids as well. And I learned so much from her. And we're politically, we're very political in our family, and we're very well read about everything that's going on. And Model UN has engaged her so much more than I've ever seen, and my son as well, who went from not really wanting to ever register to registering when he turned 18. So as a parent, I'm asking, for more clarity, and also what we can do to make sure that these kids still have this opportunity, and one last thing I want to say, our school isn't very big, and there's not a lot of athletes. And I feel like lately there's been more emphasis on athletes in the school instead of Model UN. And these kids have such a chance to use this for college. Rutgers does it and it helps them. So again, my closing statement would be, I really hope that you reconsider this budget and try to, keep the funding as it is for the students. Thanks.
Hi, Jennifer Sullivan. I live at 227 Graham Street, and I have a very different perspective because I have really little kids. And I mean, it's quite obvious that these kids are benefiting from these trips because they're all extremely well spoken. So it's obvious that it's very important. But I think why I came and what I had to say about it was a little bit more on the lack of clarity process, because what was I appreciated in hearing Dr. Suska's report was, I guess, how giving a little bit of the background of how this started. It sounded like it came to you as what you called a new request not budgeted for, but in my mind, this can't be the first time that that possibly has happened, that a new trip not budgeted for came to you that way. And as a parent of super young kids in the district, hoping to have a very positive experience coming through all the way through these schools, I that's really why I came, not necessarily thinking I would speak, but hearing that, wondering why that turned into the flurry of communications that I was seeing about all of this and what looked like really, really serious and real concerns, and kind of hoping that the board would also be looking at ways to avoid that going forward, I guess.
Thank you. Anybody else in person for public comment?
So, my name is Declan Woodside. I'm going to be a junior at Highland Park High School. And I want to talk about, I think, something that might be a little bit more niche, but I think something that these trips definitely bring a value. And that's language experience. I think specifically the trip with Mexico that Model UN hosted. I wasn't able to go on that trip, but I can only imagine the experience that the attendees had with the Spanish language. I personally hold language very dear. It's a huge passion of mine. I speak Spanish at an intermediate level. I've shown a lot of interest in a lot of other languages. And I think language it's not just something of a skill, it's a power that you have. Being able to speak a language, I think, is important. And there's never a situation where being able to speak a language is not useful in any way whatsoever. And so I think that although it's a bit more niche, it's definitely something that needs recognition, that the value that go into some of these trips, even if it's not out of country, such as Florida, there's a huge Cuban population in Florida, and you're gonna get enough experience even just going to some other state where there's a different ethnic group that's located there. You're gonna get a lot of different language experience, and I think that's something that is valuable and I hope is taken into consideration when the new plan is brought up.
Thank you.
My name is Karasadala, and I completely agree with what the previous speaker said, but I'd like to, as many of the other students here from the Model UN Club have addressed, I'd just like to bring up how much value these trips have brought to me. Because personally, before I started Model UN, I was a very introverted person. I was very shy. I couldn't really speak up and communicate with people. But now I feel like as a person, I've been a lot more confident. I think that Model UN, the educational opportunity that it brings is just immense. It's not found anywhere else. And the opportunity that we have, I was able to go to DC, and just the people that I've talked to from different states, the people that I've talked to from different countries, it's just an opportunity that I've not seen anywhere else, and it helped me grow as a person by a considerable amount. And I'd like to request that you don't change the policies that have worked so well in the past, because they have helped me as a person so greatly and have helped so many other people, whether it was considering new careers or just being a more confident person in society.
Thank you. Anybody else in person?
Hi, my name's Fiamma Aaron. I live at 240 South Adelaide Avenue. I think many of us, especially after hearing from some of these students, can see and know the value of these groups, specifically Model UN and DECA, for those individual students. But I think maybe we need to think about how we all benefit as a community, and how the schools specifically benefit from those students succeeding and going on and getting merit to colleges that they, getting merit, going to those colleges and reflecting good upon our community. And how do we prioritize these groups and the trips that are inherent to them? Because specifically Model UN and DECA may not exist if we don't have these specific troops, because they are like bound together. They lift the whole school system up. So how do we prioritize them? I mean, certain groups may have an amazing trip planned, but is that going to raise the whole community up? Is it going to improve the school's quality, literally, in the numbers and how we rank? So I think that there's possibly ways to look at things and how to prioritize and how to say, you know what? This is a specific value that we want to keep. And we want to allocate funds to these particular groups. I don't know if that's in the realm of possibility, but it's something that I wanted to bring up. Thank you.
Anybody else in person? Okay, we'll move to Zoom. If you are on Zoom and would like to make a public comment, please raise your Zoom hand and Angela will announce your name and you can unmute. Okay, Rebecca.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Rebecca Hirsch. I live at 331 Felton Avenue. I'm sorry I couldn't be there in person today, but thank you for having the hybrid option always. It's much appreciated. I wanted to request that the district put a pause on the restructuring of the funding model, however laudable it might be, to the following, to not starting in September, but to starting the following September, 2026. I think that springing this on these clubs at such a late date could easily end up killing the clubs for the next school year. There are already students working on these projects that have been in these clubs. They work towards these projects and programs. They are extremely motivated and driven to participate in them and to achieve these next levels of achievement. And I think that not knowing what they're going to cost, or I think, you know, I mean, if these trips are going to be $6,000 a student, I think springing that fundraising burden on these kids with almost no notice will effectively kill these programs. DECA and Model UN really exist to do these activities, and it's not just like the clubs that, you know, do things then they just meet at lunchtime, and these clubs are very different models. And I don't think that they're going to have enough time to adjust to a new funding model so quickly. If there's a way that we could do it in a more deliberative way and give people a year to adjust, I think that would be really valuable. I am very worried about the kids that are currently in these programs that are working towards these projects that don't have a year or two to figure it out while we figure out how to raise, you know, $50,000 or something. You know, these kids are, a lot of the kids that have spoken tonight are going to be juniors and seniors, and this is it for them. So I would really urge the board to put a pause on this and give the community and these programs a year to adjust to a new model that, you know, achieves the equitable distribution model that the board is looking for. And, you know, I just wanted to reiterate what Fiamma said was that these two particular clubs really raise the profile of our district so immensely. They are so motivating to the students that are in them, and the trips motivate people to join these clubs. They are really the gold stars in our district. They provide students with you know, research, writing, public speaking, all these experiences that they do not get in class. And I really think that, and scholarship opportunities and career ideas, I really think that taking them away, I mean, I know that we say that we're not taking them away, but, you know, if we find out in August that each kid is going to have to raise $10,000 to go on them, that's killing the programs. I mean, let's be real. So,
Rebecca, I'm going to ask you to wrap up. It's been
okay,
3
no, I'm
minutes.
done. I'm done.
Okay.
We're good. Anyway,
We have
thank
another
you.
public comment after committee reports if you want to add on.
Yeah, okay. Thank you so much.
Okay, the
Okay.
next person on Zoom, Andrew.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, Board of Education. My name is Andrew. I graduated in the class of 2024. Oh, sorry, Andrew Dalton, 24 South 6th Avenue, Highland Park. Allison, at the beginning of the meeting or discussion, I know you raised concerns of not concerns, but the topic of qualification for these trips. So I want to speak a bit on that. I was very heavily involved with DECA, and when students join DECA, they have the option to participate in what we call a manual project. Out of around 95 students we had in DECA last year, roughly 55 students participated in these projects. This commitment includes three main components: the project itself, a formal written paper, and a presentation. The projects are comprehensive, ranging from organizing charity events with hundreds of participants to collaborating with districts programs like the GLOW program. These require dedication and creativity along with teamwork. And the written component of these projects is a 20-page academic paper detailing the project in depth. And the presentation is a 10-minute pitch that students carefully script and rehearse over many weeks. I'm sorry. So out of the 95 students we had, we also took those 50 students to the state competition, in which we all had the opportunity or the chance to make it to the national competition. 55 students is a lot in our school. So I know one of the concerns was having a small amount of students on the trips, but around 50 students have the opportunity to make it to the national competitions. But students often spend the majority of the school year working on these projects, but why do we do it? It's because of the skills that we develop. They're invaluable: collaboration, public speaking, adaptability, professional writing, and the list goes on and on. I'd also like to add that every member of DECA is required to do a job interview formatted project that builds on quick thinking skills and prepares students for job interviews in the future, in which I had to do a few of them in my first year of college, and I can confidently say that DECA had helped me with those skills. Attending these conferences and competitions allow us to apply these skills outside of the classroom in real-world environments. I'd like to thank the dedication from the board on this issue. Thank you again.
Thank you, Andrew. Our next public commenter online, Carla.
Hello,
Hi.
can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, hi, my name is Carla Yanni. I live at 334 Summit Place. And I would like to bring up a new subject for the evening, which is credit-bearing music classes that go on out-of-state trips. I think the music teachers do an outstanding job. The concert a few weeks ago was incredible, but for example, there wasn't a jazz band this spring. The fact that the music classes meet period A is a real disincentive. It makes music seem like a burden rather than an opportunity to the students. I think any reasonable, decent high school should have a good music program to create well-rounded students, and it should be available to everyone. So the out-of-state trips are an incentive and a recruitment device for a part of our curriculum that is already, I think, being diminished by its scheduling in period A. Many of the same skills that have been mentioned about clubs like Model UN and DECA are true of music as well. Collaboration, social skills, it looks good on college applications. And think about the profile of the school district. I mean, if I had known when my son was in second grade that there would be one language in the high school, and I feel the district shrinking the opportunities. I want these opportunities to be available for everyone. I think the question we should be asking is, how do we make these opportunities available to more people, to every student? And I also would like some clarity about the fact that if the budget for 25-26 is due in the fall of 24, why are we making changes now that affect next year's seniors? That's it.
Thank you. Our next commenter, Alex.
everyone. Could you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I am Alex Yu. I am a rising senior. I live 15 Marlborough Road near Edison. So, I've been a dedicated student in Highland Park High School. I'm currently the president of Science Bowl and Mathletes. And I want to go back to the topic of the overnight trips because I think it is a really serious concern that the budget is being cut for that area. Um, I think a little over a month ago, I went to a math competition where I was fortunately able to talk to a lot of other students from, very academically inclined school districts, and a lot of discussions with students and teachers uh, involved around, different activities in their school districts. And I really think that school districts can improve in quality from their high school's activity. So clubs uh, are a really big part of this. And I think for our school, right, it's really just DECA and Mata UN. And I think cutting off the funding for these two clubs, the trips at least for um, these overnight trips for these clubs would, like, a previous speaker said, really kill these clubs. And what I think that would do to our school district, honestly, um, is that our rank would really take a impact from this. And in turn, our school district could really suffer from future funding because our school doesn't seem to be performing really well. Now, by no means am I really qualified to, speak from a political, perspective or like social perspective on this topic. Uh, but from what I've observed, looking at other schools, is that, the better clubs they have, uh, the more academically inclined their student body is, and that leads to better funding, more opportunities for those schools. And I think that could really help our school's funding instead of hurt if we actually put more time and effort into increasing the quality of our school's clubs and programs. Thank you.
Thank you. Angela, who's next? Kieran?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, Kieran Crowley, 218 Harrison Avenue. I have a question about a different topic relating to the hiring of Dr. Ressa, who was announced a month ago. It's a specific one asking for clarity on his interim title. So, yeah, since that announcement, I've been wondering why it's an interim position for that executive director role. Is it because of the significance of that role, that it's just standard, or is there something specific around, I guess the length of his commitment or the district's plan? And yeah, I guess it's just one word, but I think knowing some of the context around that would be very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Eliza. Eliza, you can unmute. What's the last name? B. Eliza B. You have your hand raised. If you're ready for public comment, you can unmute. We can't hear them. Eliza, I'm sorry, we're not able to hear you. My suggestion would be to pop out of the meeting and pop back in, and I'll come back to you in a second. Jennifer Altman.
Oh, hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, hi, this is Jennifer Altman. I'm at 31 Walter Avenue, and a mother of a rising senior. So, as you can imagine, very concerned about the quickness of this change for her flagship year, if you may. So I would like to piggyback on the idea of pausing on this or just making sure it does not affect next year. But that was actually not what I wanted to say. I two quick points. I'm sorry, two quick questions and just a point I wanted to make. I'll say the quick questions quick. One was I was just curious if and you probably have all looked at this, is cost sharing with the district on these trips, maybe with the nurse or any of those other aspects, because I know that's a very expensive cost. And I have heard that districts have done that in the past, especially for trips like DECA or Model UN, where you have schools from all over the state competing. And the other quick question was if it could be public, how much the cost of administrators per diem is. I'm very concerned about that new rule. Sorry, I missed whether it was a mandate or whether it was a district decision or whether it may have been a contract decision. But I think that is uh, that just seems like a cost that's not needed. Because I know the teachers do this on their own already. So if there's any way to negotiate that with the union or any way, I think that could make a huge difference. And then just my point, and I'll think about how to articulate this. I'm concerned about the teachers that are involved in this work. I'm concerned about how they heard. I'm concerned if they are being given the praise or the support um, that they deserve, because I know they get paid for the extra time, but the commitment and the success of these programs is so exemplary that I really want to make sure they're taken care of, for lack of a better way of saying it. So if they were not told in a way that was open and early enough, and I just hope that that has been, that they're given new explanation. And I really worried about them going into the summer and feeling that these programs that they really put their heart and soul in have been so again, just as a parent who's concerned, as my child and many of their friends are very close to these teachers, I would just ask to go out of your way to make sure that they're thanked and they don't have to worry going into the summer about these programs. Thank you.
Thank you. Did Eliza come back? Eliza, if you want to try unmuting now? Nothing. Is she on mute? She's muted. Eliza B. I don't know. Right, isn't there anybody else? Livy? Beckman?
Hello,
Hi.
my name is Libby Peckman. I am a rising junior at Highland Park High School. I want to, share my concern because personally, I'm thinking, what's the what's the point of paying for education if we don't prioritize the experiences that genuinely and truly bring it to life? These trips are where so many of us connect to what we've learned in the real world, and discover new perspectives and grow in ways that, like Joseph said, textbooks and tests just can't offer. And if we're investing in education, shouldn't we be putting real value on the parts that, make it meaningful, the parts that stay with us long after the school day ends? And that's prioritizing these trips in our funding in general. And additionally, I understand that middle class families are already often end up.
Livy, I think we lost you. Oh,
Hello?
yeah, can you just go back like one sentence?
Yeah, sorry. I understand that middle class families already often end up covering a large portion of the costs for students who receive financial aid. And I really respect the effort to make these trips accessible. I just worry that if funding goes down, that burden could grow even more. And I hope we can keep thinking about ways to make these experiences fair and sustainable for all families. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Livy. Maxwell? Maxwell, fan, you can unmute.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Just speak a little bit louder.
Okay, hold on, let me fix my settings. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. My name is Maxwell Fan, and I'm an officer of the Highland Park Model UN and Congress Club and a rising senior. And I wanted to talk about the importance of these trips and why I really hope that the budget could be reconsidered. I remember how important diversity and civic participation is to Highland Park. And I've lived my entire life here, and I think it shows in who I am and my values. And I remember learning in Bartle about civic issues and how to be civically engaged from a diverse set of teachers. I remember in middle school having Miss Ferengo as a teacher in my 8th grade global civics class. And of course, I remember learning so much about different cultures and global trips and more about our country's history to an extent not achievable in other textbooks and lessons when we went to Philadelphia and DC in the Model UN Club. And the trips that we've had the opportunity to go on in Model UN are deeply valuable to us. And as you've heard from many previous students, they all learned a lot, which they could not have in any other opportunity or on trips that were not curated by their club advisor and social studies teacher, Dr. Adam Gold, but instead curated by a for-profit third-party organization. Even if that cost may be lower, the value is just not there, quite simply. And it's a vacation for fun with friends rather than an educational, which should be the top priority of any school trip, an educational trip, which teaches us things that we couldn't learn in other ways. And the new proposed budget plan would, to be quite honest, effectively kill these trips and greatly damage these clubs, which have a great value to our high school. And I know it is out of place for the town that I've always lived in, Highland Park, the town which cares so deeply about diversity and civic understanding, to excise that from the grasp of so many kids who have worked so hard for this opportunity or are even looking forward to it. These trips not only hold value for the kids in Model UN, but they are also a deep part of our high school as a whole. We've had 330 kids, I believe is the number from the last board meeting, take an AP exam in the 23 to 24 school year, and 304 get a 3 or higher. These trips are motivational to high academically achieving students in our school, or people who are maybe not at that level yet but want to be. These trips motivate them and bring them closer to care about school more. We've had the recent salutatorian Ethan Ross, he was an officer in Model UN, and the graduating class of 25's class president Sophie Hutner was also an officer in Model UN. And we also offer financial aid in the club to those who need it. These trips are open to anybody. Anybody can join the club and participate and try to get into these trips. So I would just say, please reconsider. The damage caused to the heart of the school cannot be greater than the budget saved, given all of this. Thank you.
Thank you. Angela, who's next? Mary Trent?
Hi, how are you? Mary Trin. I live at 214 South 2nd Ave in Highland Park. I just wanted to touch upon really quickly, honestly, the communication side of this whole issue. We can see obviously that, by the amount of people that are speaking tonight, that it, touched a chord, right? Is that the right saying? And I feel that, this happens every so often where everyone felt a little blindsided. I heard from my son when he came home from school one day, oh, I walked into, my class and found this all out that there's not going to be any more trips. And, so it was the way that the parents, I think, heard about all of this so secondhand from their kids. And and the same thing with the teachers. I know that the superintendent mentioned earlier that yes, she acknowledges that the communication probably wasn't ideal of how that was first handled. So I hope that going forward, and especially over the summer, as all of this is reviewed, that there can be much better communication and emails sent out and updates as to what the next steps are, and what's going to happen, and and hopefully avoid something like this in the future, because it just seemed like, had it been brought up at a point where, oh, we're thinking about this and we'd like to get your input, you know what I mean, it would have been a better way to go about it, as opposed to, it seemed like a decision was kind of made, and then and now you're getting obviously all this feedback about it. So that was really just my my point, was that I felt like the communication needed to be a lot better, and I'm just really hopeful that going forward we'll get a lot more communication on this over the next couple months, because it is very important as we get into this next school year, to have this resolved as soon as possible. And I think there's a lot of students and parents, obviously, that will try to help, and just want to be, a part of the decision making. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Jillian? Jillian, if you'd like to unmute.
Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, my name is Jeline, and I'm currently a rising junior at Highland Park High School and a member of DECA. Like others have said before, these trips are monumental to all our high school careers and what our high school experience is. I've heard my peers who are in Model UN mention how their trips have helped them before as grow as a person, and I can agree that our DECA trips have done the same. I'm one of the students who are able to qualify for ICDC through a manual that Andrew has mentioned before, and I cannot stress how many skills I've gained through this. Not only have I learned how to carry out a project, but at these competitions, I learned how to present with passion and learn how to network. At ICDC, I was able to speak to people from other states and other countries. I was able to learn about these cultures firsthand, which I probably wouldn't have been able to get this chance just by staying in state trips. This was something that cannot be replicated elsewhere. I would also like to say that DECA has helped the GLOW students so much. My brother is a part of the GLOW Junior program, so he isn't able to go on these trips, but seeing students that are like him being able to have the same opportunities as me is just as important. We have done numerous fundraisers throughout the year, and we can only fundraise so much. I'm also the current class president of the class of 2027, and I know the importance of fundraising and what work has to be put in. I believe that if we raise the cost of these trips for students by a great amount, it will only become harder for us to attend, even through all the effort we put in. So I hope you can take this into consideration when allocating the budget's money. Thank you.
Thank you. Jackie?
Hello.
Jackie, you can unmute.
Hello.
Go ahead. And then,
You can hear me, right?
Yes, I can hear you.
All right. Yeah, my name's Jackie Lynn, and I'm a rising junior. And I'd like to reiterate what a lot of my peers had said already about how integral these trips are to the respective clubs like Model UN and DECA. I wanted to talk about these two specifically because I am a member of both, and they are clubs that are really dear to me and that I like to see continue get funding. And I just wanted to bring up a previously mentioned point and really emphasize it, that these clubs are really built around these trips. the trips such as ICDC and like Mexico for Model UN, these are trips that are the entire club is really orientated around. It's what the students put their effort into. It's what they put research into, time, and really is the major learning experience for these clubs. And I believe that not it these clubs not getting the funding to do these trips severely hinders and really hinders these clubs and drain them of their educational value.
Thank you, Jackie. Mary? May?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
So I'm a rising senior. I've done Model UN since freshman year, and I live at 1304 Ella Lane. So I would like to talk about the same issue, but bring up a different point that I don't think has been explored enough, which is about the cultural value that these trips bring. As a sophomore, I was luckily able to go to Mexico, and I think that was probably one of the most important high school experiences to me at all. We didn't just debate there, we also learned about the Mexican people, how they live their cultures, how they um, view life in different viewpoints. We actually visited two high schools there and got to bond with these high school students. And I realized that the world around us is not just the same. It's not the same educational values. They talked about their political views, and I really learned a lot of new things that I don't think I would have ever gotten before. And it's the fact that not only does these trips give us cultural value, but these high schools, Mr. Gold, Dr. Gold, who is our club advisor, had told us that we have these partnerships with these high schools for years, and they rely on us to bring new experiences and to help develop their Model UN clubs. So it's not just our school district gaining value from these kind of trips, but high schools around the world. And from these trips that I've been able to go on to DC, to Philadelphia, I've met people from all around the world. I've met people from Morocco, from Mexico, from Puerto Rico, from Guatemala that have really just opened my eyes on how people live differently and experiences that I don't think you could get just at here, just at the States, or even in just America in general. And not only do these trips provide cultural aspects and accomplishments and benefits, but they really help develop you as a person. Dr. Gold, he really stresses the importance of being thankful and grateful on these trips. And every time I go on one of these trips, I come out so more positively and thankful for just everything around me. And I think they could bring lots of value such that to other people. We do shout outs, we encourage each other. I talk to people that I would have never talked to at school regularly through these clubs. And I think that is an important experience that is something that everyone needs to have and should be considered when reconsidering the budget. Thank you.
Thank you. I need to say that louder. Eva.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello, my name is Eva Pandini. I live on 53 Lambiance Court. I am an alumni of the Highland Park Model UN and Central Jersey Model UN Congress Club. And I just have to say that I think that as an alumni, it's really been such a formative experience to get to go on these trips, and that the students will be making extremely important memories. I've had the opportunity to speak with other students who are much older than me who still regard these trips as some of their most formative memories from high school that really shaped their experiences culturally, and how they formed long-lasting bonds and how they remember Highland Park, the true culture that they experienced here. And I think it is incredibly important to prioritize these trips, especially at a time now where cultural experiences are being minimized. To really act against the current political situation, it's more important now than ever that this is prioritized, along with also the language program. I think it's quite a shame to have only one language available as a proper learning program throughout the school, as cultural development is also crucially entwined with language and travel. So I really do hope that this will be reinstated as a policy that these students will be allowed to experience so that they may form these memories and experience the world with a more greater expanse and understanding of education. Thank you.
Thank you. Eliza.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Go ahead, Eliza.
Getting used to the non-school Chromebook, I guess. So I am Eliza Boylan, 127 Park Place. I just graduated this June, and I was the president of the Highland Park High School choir. I just wanted to talk a little bit more about choir. I'll be really short, but we got the amazing chance of going on a trip to Boston in the 23-24 school year. It was such a amazing experience just looking back on my high school years. We were there with students from all across the country and some from Canada, people speaking French. It was really amazing. So I just kind of wanted to stress the importance of trips, not only to the Model UN program and to DECA, but also to in our music department. I also wanted to talk a little bit, I think it was Carla that mentioned the A period. It definitely does limit our membership. I don't know if any of you have ever tried to sing when you first wake up. It's not the easiest thing to do. But it does limit our membership. There are students that aren't available that early, and I don't know, maybe trying to reconsider that would be helpful to our program. But that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Eliza. Angela? Angela, you can unmute.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
So my name is Angela Chow, and I'm a rising sophomore. And I just want to reiterate on the point about transparency. So I found out about this entire thing during a math class where a classroom was like, "Oh, did you hear you're not allowed to go on trips anymore?" And there was a lot of misinformation going around. Like at first it was like, so no field trips allowed, and then they were like, "Oh no, it's just overnight trips." But then now that I found out that it was out of state overnight trips, so I think if there was an email sent out to the students as well as the parents, it would have assured many people, since I'm the vice president of the Asian Culture Club, so I was really worried about that. But along with that, I'm also a member of DECA and Model UN, as one of the previous speakers was. And I think that it's very important. These trips are very important. It's a great bonding experience and especially a learning experience. I would not have been this deep into politics, and I wouldn't be so much more aware about the world. And I think right now it's very important about these things. And it really greatly affects our future with these competitions, because they're something great to put on your college application. My sister, she graduated this year, so I saw a lot about how she was on Common App and putting her applications in, and it's a great thing to put onto your application. And as well as the Mandarin program, I know a lot of my friends, they're taking Mandarin, and for a lot of colleges, they would like you to take 3 years of language and maybe even 4 years. And as far as I know, they like you to have the same language for the entire time. So I feel it's a little unfair and disadvantage to them that they find out at such a late notice that they now have to change to a completely different language that they've been learning for maybe the last 4-5 years. Thank you.
Thank you. And with no other hands raised, we are going to close public comment.
Excuse me. I was wondering if real quick I could just make a comment just after now the public comments is
Is it about trips?
what?
Is it about the trips?
In general, yes.
Can you wait till finance and facilities
Yeah.
discussion? Perfect. All right, we're going to move on to our board action items. I'm sorry, board committee reports and recommendations. Skipping ahead. We'll begin with curriculum and instruction.
All right. Okay, y'all can hear me. So we met on 6/12 with Dan, myself, Ethan, as well as Christina, Michelle, and Michelle Rodriguez and Lisa Saka. One of the main points, I think a really lively discussion we had were about the pilot program from Envision for the math adoption that we piloted in 5 classrooms. We got some feedback that the teachers enjoyed that experience and kind of having the in-the-box solution that linked to assessments. That was something that made it easy for them from an implementation standpoint. And one of the things that it really pushed the conversation on when we think about the future of math adoptions and what we want to use as a high quality instructional material, we really discussed that. And there were some concerns shared about the actual academic rigor of Envision and thinking through, you know, what we want to actually, once we implement something, it's a big change for, change for the teachers. We want to have the right resources, but we also want to drive to student outcomes. So a really vibrant, great conversation about that, talking about the kind of bigger context for academic achievement in the nation where we're seeing, you know, not the gains that you might want to see and how we as Highland Park can really lead the way. One of the things we discussed was the kind of intentional integration of assessments over the past year and investment in that. We want to continue that very strong investment in showing the commitment to supporting student growth and achievement for all students. So really continuing on the outstanding work of Ms. Saka and Rodriguez. As you know, we think through this next wave of incorporating feedback. Now it's picking the right high quality instructional material to make sure that can help students across all proficiencies. And so one of the things that we landed on, continued discussion around what is that material that's really going to suit the needs of our students. And so there's continued discussion about that. But I think it's important to note that, you know, we don't take the decision lightly, and we want to make sure that we are really thinking about a coherent solution on the math adoption side. So very vibrant conversation there. Let's see, we've got the focus grant was accepted. So we received a grant from the DOE to pay for the universal screener for ELA for grades K3. And that was the amount for that was $4,405 to be precise. We discussed policy 5516 and regulation 5516 for the use of electronic comm recording devices. So we appreciate, you know, that this was brought up. A concern was raised for the high school about allowing students to use phones during study hall and field trips. So the thought was that it interrupts social relationships and may be better to have a full ban there. So we want to return that and have more, you know, future discussion there. We discussed field trips, which were approved. We approved the field trip for the GLOW program specifically to explore the community. Those are the main, I think, you know, get very robust, good, great conversation on that side. I thought good kind of forward-looking discussions to come on that. And then we will be moving, I think it's 1 through 11, and I'll read through these. Approval of the field trips, approval of the HIB reports, approval of the evaluation of the instruments for the back to school 25-26 school year, approval of the safe opening and continuity of service plan, approval of the universal graduate students for teaching internships and junior practicum and observation. There's a list of students there. Approval of the sidebar agreement between the Highland Park Board of Education and the Highland Park Education Association. Approval of the spring school bus emergency evacuation drill. Approval of the submission for funding of optimal comprehensive universal screeners. So that's what we mentioned before, the grant that was approved. Approval of the agreement with School of Health Sciences. Approval of the agreement with William Patterson University. And approval of the home instruction. And I think that is it. And if Ethan want to add anything, I know we had a robust discussion. If there's anything I missed from that conversation we had, feel free to add. Any questions?
No, that was great, Sarah. Of course, I'll have something to say about cell phones, but but I want to make sure you're finished with your report first.
Yes, please do.
Okay. Well, anyway, I just wanted to say, you know, really happy to have the chance to review the policy and also the accompanying regulation, which is sort of whatever the rubber hits the road. I think both are a big step in the right direction. I know the Central Leadership Committee has discussed this in depth for nearly a year. done a community survey, considered the results. The committees have had it, the standing committees have had a chance to look at the policy and regulation and offer feedback. Yeah, so the process has been really good, which I think is important because we need community buy-in here. And I think the result is going to absolutely benefit academics and mental health. So I'm absolutely glad to vote to adopt it. I think that it's really important that the policy, or rather the proposed regulation explicitly states that devices will be placed in secure locations for the duration of the school day, for the Irving Barlow Middle School, or just for the instructional period for the high school. In other words, it says in the regulation itself, you know, that there has to be a place in the classroom or in the school where cell phones are put, and it's not up, so they're not in students' pockets or coats or desks or whatever. And that's just super, super important that there's no wiggle room around that in the district or in any of the schools. You know, research shows that just having access to a cell phone reduces students' concentration, is distracting. So we want to remove that temptation so students can really get the most out of this new regulation, focus on their classwork. And also, you know, having a secure place to put phones, either for the whole day or the instructional period, is going to make it a lot easier for teachers. You know, if they're not having to constantly, you know, monitor things, there'll be instances, of course, but if there's an external place the cell phones are put, make it much easier for teachers, which is going to make it much more likely this policy is rigorously enforced and succeeds. So again, this policy is a big improvement over the status quo. You know, I do think it's a missed opportunity in the high school because unlike at Irving Barlow in the middle school, high school is not a bell-to-bell ban, at least in the current proposed regulation. So in fact, the regulation explicitly for the high school will allow cell phone use during lunchtime, on a bus for a school field trip, overnight or not, and during passing time between classes in a study hall. You know, the research is really clear. Cell phones have no place in classrooms. It's still emerging on cell phones and person's social skills, social climate at a school. That kind of connection is harder to get really you know, firm results on. But just speaking as a parent here, you know, and I think anyone who's watched kids at a playground or at a party or just hanging out in the you know in the street sees how cell phones change social interaction. You know, it reduces eye-to-eye contact, talking with people. You're posting to your friends, and you know, instead of talking with them and discussing things. And I think we need to make every effort to strengthen kids' social skills and create a climate where students are respectfully talking with each other and not posting in ways that are counterproductive and don't, you know, allow these beneficial social relationships to develop. So, you know, I think good step in the right direction. I think there's a missed opportunity here. And I just really would like to see data come back to the board about how this policy is being enforced and how students and teachers and administrators are feeling about it. How is it going? Is it succeeding? I'd like to see this included, questions about the cell phones included in the culture and climate survey. That's an annual thing with our district. And I'd just like to hear from administrators and teachers on how they feel this policy is changing the schools, you know, for better or for worse. It'd be great to hear about that next year and the succeeding years, so we know if the regulation is working as it's written now, or if it perhaps needs to be strengthened in the future. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Ethan. I knew you would add your touch there, and I knew it. One thing to note too there too, that, you know, that was a big topic of conversation, which is how we actually enact this. And, you know, I think there's an understanding that we're gonna have to take a lot of thought and care and, you know, monitor this as we actually enact the policy to its fullest and think through different models in the way that it's going to be as facilitative of what we're trying to achieve. So that was a main point there. And then I think, Jen, I saw you were gonna.
Before Ethan was talking, I just had a question about the storage, the way that we're talking about storing the phones, because I haven't seen any specific notes about that, but I know that's still to be determined. And I think there were some advantages to something like the Yonder pouch, where in an emergency you could cut it open or rip it open somehow or something, so the kids would have the phones on their person. And I know some of the community members were concerned about those emergency situations. And then someone else mentioned some kind of a metal locker. And I just was curious how that worked. Are there metal lockers in the classrooms, or would the kids hold this metal locker with the phone in their backpack?
Yeah, those
how that would work.
both came up as a point of, potentially younger pouches. And I believe those were discussed for some reason as being a little easier for younger students, and then the potentially the lockers for older students. That we discussed different mechanisms for making, the unlocking kind of with the lockers, you can imagine the lines and how that would work. There's actually real operations that need to be thought through here. And so there was discussion around that. Christina, was there anything? I mean, I think it was all, we were discussing what the options were and looking to what some other districts have done to more automate it, but there's risks with that as well, where
Right.
there's things they can unlock themselves, but then you have to guard, there's a lot of practical. I don't think we came to an answer except for we're investigating.
Yeah, we're investigating both of those. We are trying to explore some options, including how to fund these things, either option or, what we're going to do with them. So we're still exploring all of those options, and that's summer work. And then managing it, right? So there's the actual purchase of whatever whether it's the pouches or lock boxes or something like that. And then there is the human resource capital of it, the logistics on, do we need to pay more staff to do something with this? Do we need to, how is the flow going to work and things like that? So the feedback we've gotten from other districts that have done similar things is that it just takes some time in the beginning to develop a process, but we kind of have to look at what we have at our disposal to figure out what is going to work best. So we're exploring those over the summer.
That was my, oh, sorry.
I was just gonna say.
Yeah.
No, I was just going to ask it because part of my question was going to be about the human resources, who's going to do it, how we're going to implement it. But I'm also on the side of Ethan where I'm like, high school doesn't really need it during the day. I'm open to lunchtime, but like on the buses and in the hallways, it still really doesn't cut down on a lot of the bullying or behavior issues that we have. And if they have access to it, then you have to have a teacher ask for it, and that could be a potential issue for both the teachers and the students.
Yeah, so I think what we're going to do is we'll continue to monitor it. So the idea is I've done a deep dive into the discipline and referral data regarding anything that's been through personal communication devices. And then we'll continue monitoring that and seeing how that comes, especially particularly in the high school, if we want to tighten up the policy, regulation, if we want to tighten up the regulation moving forward, because the data is showing that still during those unstructured times for high school, like passing time and study hall, it's still becoming problematic, then we can always reopen the regulation based on that data and adjust it. But the idea is through education, the students would be granted more access as they got older to also teach them how to be good users of the devices. I think there's a lot of value in that too, because they're going to go out in the world. And if we don't, if we don't allow some sort of gradual release of this at some point, I think we're also doing the students a disservice. So, but again, we'll look at that data and monitor it very closely.
So is it something that we're going to like roll out where we start off doing it, more strict with the younger kids and then monitor while we're giving like the high school more access, and then monitor in the next year, seeing if it does reduce any kind of issue?
Correct. Yes.
And
So
change accordingly.
yeah. So full ban Bartle and Irving. Not that we've seen that issue, but just to include them, Irving, Bartle, and middle school full ban all day, instructional and non-instructional. And then for the high school, it would be just during instructional time. So when a high school student is sitting in their math class or their social studies class or whatever, that they're not allowed to use their own personal electronic communication devices. All students in grades 2 through 12 have access to the district Chromebooks that they can use for the need for that instructional work.
And how do we handle burner phones?
What? I'm sorry. I heard a.
Yeah, how do we handle the burner?
So
phones?
if you look at the regulation clearly outlines if students have those, and there is a progressive form of support and disciplinary action that happens, and it's by grade appropriate. So if you read the regulation, you'll see first offense, second offense, whether it's elementary, middle, high school, and you'll see that. And it definitely comes to a point where if the students continue, at some point, a parent, a guardian, or caregiver will have to come and retrieve said device. And there's restorative ways, actions, and things like that. So you can see it's age appropriate, and that was feedback from the schools. And again, we'll revisit that as well, because if that's not working and we need to change course on what it means when students, don't follow through on their end of the bargain of the regulation, we can adjust that too. But we thought this was, the buildings had a lot of input, school leadership teams had a lot of input in working through this.
Yeah, and the other thing too, is that especially when you think about the high school and the logistics, it's just harder. So we're going to learn a lot in doing it in situations that are a little more contained, where we can get feedback and figure out what just works. And so when we do roll something out, it's going to be really methodical and I think have a higher rate of success while acknowledging that we're still figuring out what's the best way to do this.
Sorry, I had a quick question about the phone policy too. So I apologize if I missed this at a last meeting, but are middle school and high school students still gonna have control over the location of their phones? Like, are they gonna be able to have it in their bag? Because this has been an issue that's been discussed heavily among high school students, and I know the overwhelming majority of high school students feel that at least if they can keep it in their bag in case of emergency, that is the feeling of the student body.
Yeah, so for Irving Bartle Middle School, that's the Bartle will be, I think under Miss Knapp's leadership, she would like the pouches. They're in the high school, the ones where you put they're like shoe rack. Thank you. Shoe racks at Bartle, just because the students, it's a little bit more controlled at the elementary level because they're pretty much with the same teacher all day. So right now they're actually under some change, some new tier 1 and tier 2 behavioral supports at Bartle, we're actually not seeing as much of an issue. So they thought that would be a fair way to sort of control that. At the middle school, we're exploring the two options, which are the pouches or the lock boxes. If it's the pouches, the pouch would be on the child. So the physical location would still be on them. They put it in the thing, they lock it up, and it's with them. And on the way out, they unlock it. If it's a box, it wouldn't be. The lock boxes would have to be in some sort of central location. So whether it's the main office here, again, those would be logistics we'd have to figure out. They would not be. So the decision to go one way or the other for middle school would be based on obviously what we could afford to get, and afford meaning the physical purchase of whatever it is plus the people power to be able to do it. So the same thing. And then at the high school, we would look at the potential same thing, but most likely just the lock boxes or maybe the shoe racks or something like that. With I know that they're there. I just don't think they were used previously with consistency. So the plan is in August, as part of my communication to the district, my welcome back address would be about that. That communication would be carefully crafted from my level on down. The same communication goes to the admins, that goes to the teachers. So in their syllabus and their course expectations in their Google Classrooms are putting out the same expectations, and there is adherence to those expectations.
Okay, sorry. Just a quick follow-up question. So the pouches, would those be able to be student unlocked? Like in the case of an emergency, a student could go into their bag and unlock the pouch? And
It has to be unlocked by a magnet, so they'd have to get access to the magnet.
Okay, because I know the main concern, and this is something that's been discussed in classes I've been in or history classes, when there are national emergencies in schools, students want to be able to contact either emergencies or their
Yeah.
parents in these scenarios. So that is something that I think a lot of the students are concerned about when we say like lock
Right.
boxes. And
So we
stuff.
appreciate it. Oh, I will just say that, so at any time, if anybody has an emergency, they can go to the main office and call home or call somebody, and vice versa. Right now, you can call the main office to contact your child, and we will bring them down to adhere to that. I'm going to circle back to the emergency we had, last year, the year before at the high school. A lot of times when you have access and you want to contact, I understand making sure that your child or someone that you love, your parent, somebody is okay in an emergency, but also sometimes by that quick access has released some confidential information in terms of our location of where we are and puts us at a significant risk in an emergency. So I know that we want things timely to come out, and I know I've been criticized in the past for those emergencies that my communication doesn't come out timely, but that's because we're reacting in emergency. We have very particular things we have to do. I'm operating under the Office of Emergency Management and local law enforcement to be able to push out communication. So those things are important, but I would also probably just push back a little bit to say we have ways to contact anybody in an emergency now through the main office phones. Quick access to your device will actually make us safer, believe it or not.
Yeah, I was just going to respond to that, which is, I think it's a really good part for communication where acknowledge that's like a fear of folks. They want to be able to open it. But however, there's a protocol when there's emergency and it shouldn't be just to pick up the phone, right? I mean, I think that's kind of there's a broader way to handle that. But I do think that's something to deal with, right? Where it's like, I know I want to be able to under a situation where and have that control. So I think maybe that's a communication point that's worth incorporating.
Just one more quick point that I think we brought up a couple months back about this is that maybe we could look into education for parents on how to model good behavior at home. Because that even as an adult, like I think Ethan brought up, just having the phone on you, you're kind of tempted to use it. I recently was at the doctor's office and in the waiting room, everybody's just sitting there either filling out paperwork or on their phones. However, I ended up needing an x-ray and had to leave my purse and phone and everything in the room and walk to this other room. And we were all just chatting, waiting for the x-ray because nobody had their phones. And we commented on it like, oh my God, we're talking to strangers, so even adults, could use some guidance on that. And certainly, I mean, I'm yelled at from my kids, put your phone down. We're supposed to be playing this game. I'm like, I'm just checking. Doesn't matter. Put your phone down. So that would be helpful for the parents too.
Can I make a quick comment unless someone else has something to say? I had some time
Go
already.
ahead.
Two things fairly quickly. First, just Dr. Suska, I hope you feel comfortable talking to the board about the different levels of resources that might be needed for different ways of implementing the policy. I mean, it shouldn't be all on you and Denise and your staff to try and imagine how much money could possibly be spent, right? I mean, if we had a menu of options and saw the possibilities, I think we could all help to make a decision if that was appropriate. And so you might feel more confident in going back to the community and saying, this is what we've decided. It's cost this much, but we think it's worth it. So I just hope that's something we get a chance to take a look at this summer as a board. And also, speaking of funding, I was wondering sort of whether the district is considering asking students who bring cell phones to contribute to the equipment might be needed to implement the new policy. I mean, cell phones cost money, plans cost money, cases and what other stuff. I mean, building in the cost of the supplies in school to store your cell phone seems reasonable to me if it's not extravagant. And I think that might take some of the bite out of the district, take some pressure off the district as well. So is that also being considered?
No. But if the board would like me to pursue that option, I certainly can, but we can talk offline about that. I'm
Okay.
not sure I would ask students to pay for storage of the device. I'm hoping that we can come up with a couple models to be able to fund it. Like I said, I am working collaboratively with everybody because I don't want to make a decision for what will work for the high school or work for the middle school. They know their schools best. Their school leadership teams are doing remarkable work about problem solving. So I would love their suggestions and input to say, here's how we think we can run this model, or here are some options. We cost them out, and then from there we could decide from them. So I would lean into our school leadership teams who do remarkable work around problem solving to help with that.
And I'd just like to remind everyone that in the governor's proposed budget, he had suggested $20 million to go to grants to school districts to help fund these kinds of cell phone bans, to fund those lock boxes and the yonder pouches, for example. A budget should be introduced this week and has to be passed by June 30th. So we'll know very shortly if that money made it into the budget. And I would imagine that guidance on how to apply for that grant funding would be coming shortly thereafter in order for it to be available to districts by the fall. So as we think about funding, we will know shortly whether we're going to be able to access help from the state in order to help fund that. I would, I agree. I would just say, we ask students to pay for insurance on district provided devices. That is a family expense. And as we work to figure this out, the yonder pouches aren't extraordinarily expensive. And if it turns out that the manpower is more expensive, I don't think that's the end of the world.
I think just on the topic of having students pay for the pouches, just kind of from the perspective of a student, if you're going to tell them that the district is locking up their phones, they're not going to pay to help you do it. So I don't think that's, yeah.
Just keep their phones in their bags.
Yeah.
I would do that. That would be what it is.
Okay, equity and excellence.
Well, that conversation just took about a quarter of my notes off the plate. And so we did have that topic on our agenda. So we met on June 12th. And we actually had special guests for the first time in a while. Members of CPAC, our Special Education Parent Advisory Group, joined us. Just a little bit of background on that. We did get a request from the leadership team at CPAC to attend an upcoming E&E meeting, Equity and Excellence meeting, to kind of discuss their focus areas and align efforts to support all students across special education services with the district and board level conversations that we're having, especially in light of the upcoming, or actually currently in the preliminary stages of the evaluation of our special education program. So of course, we welcomed members of CPAC. We're very happy to have them, and we had a very productive discussion, beginning of what we foresee to be more discussions in the future. So they came very well prepared with a nice presentation on some of the discussion items. So I'm going to just kind of go through highlights from their presentation and key takeaways, and then this discussion that we had. So first, CPAC shared highlights from this past school year, 2024-2025, highlights, high points, accomplishments, I guess. One, they talked about improving CPAC operations, examples of which include incorporating themed meetings, guest speakers, updating their bylaws for their organization, so just doing some really good operational work, and re-energizing their meetings. They strengthened family engagement across the district with diverse families. They also spent time on clarifying CPAC's role as a district level advisory group, focusing on parent experiences. They also identified priority areas in collaboration with Dee Deecher and our board liaison, Sarah Pixley. Haven't yet advanced an action plan around those priority areas, but they have been working closely. And we'll continue to work closely with board and district admin to fulfill that. So then we talked about CPAC's goals for 2025-26. 3 bullet points there. We're defining clear and measurable goals in collaboration with the district, partnering more effectively with the district. They really want to be in service to the district and the students, to turn ideas that are going to benefit students who are on special education plans or 504 plans, turn those ideas into actions, and to also address reoccurring equity gaps. So on that note, CPAC representatives shared some information or input from parents that they've received over the course of the year. And these are, of course, parents of students who are receiving special education services or are on 504 plans. Some of the priority areas for parents that did share and provide input to CPAC. One of the kind of bigger, broader areas was around transparency and equitable access to services. And a couple of the concerns that were raised, or a few of the concerns that were raised by parents in this area revolved around just not really understanding the very confusing by nature, I think, 504 process, IEP process. Parents just frequently reporting that they just don't understand why their kids who may be in the 504 system don't qualify for IEP services or support. And particularly those parents who have been told that their students have made progress, I guess, in the 504 system, so they don't qualify for the IEP, special education services. And these are parents, in some cases, whose students may be reading far below grade level, but have still been told that their student does not qualify for special education services. There's also concern about a lot of concern about lack of clear criteria for tier entry and exit and progress, I should say. So this is, definitely a systemic issue, just in terms of the movement around in and out of the different tiered levels of support. Another big area, just generally speaking, about equitable access to services. Parents have talked about delays and barriers to evaluations and support for their students. Some families who do have the financial means or have had the financial means to pay for private evaluations have done so, and those evaluations have, I think in most cases, resulted, not I think, but what has been reported or shared with us, have resulted in the district agreeing to IEP services that had been previously declined. And, we talked about, especially with a few of us on the committee being in special education, talking about these are definitely systemic issues that are clearly evidenced in the research around special education. So Highland Park is no exception to sort of these kind of concerns about the equitable access to services, and how oftentimes, unfortunately, getting those outside evaluations, private evaluations that cost a lot of money, end up resulting in more services. So we talked about, just the concerns around that, and that's an area that we definitely want to continue to address. They also shared concerns around inclusion and high academic expectations for students who are on IEPs or have 504 plans. This is another area of concern expressed by parents. For example, some parents worry that their students are not academically challenged enough or sufficiently supported to be successful. Many parents worry about, for example, missed state targets for special education students, and really concerned about what the district is doing to make sure that those students are being academically challenged at their level. Also concerned about lack of access to rigorous content. Some parents feel that their students are limited to lower level courses, quote unquote, even if they have the ability to be in more higher academic level classes. So for example, students with IEPs are not allowed to enroll in academic class. I shouldn't say not allowed, but there is a requirement, or there is a concern that students who want to enroll in academic classes like honor and AP classes, students who have IEPs, they have to waive parts of their IEP. For example, like the IEP, they may have an accommodation in their IEP that they can receive 2 teachers in their classroom, and AP and honors level classes do not provide that additional support. So in that sense, parents are saying, well, my child then is not being allowed to really reach their academic level in terms of the classes that they can take. So that was kind of one of the examples that was provided to us based on parent input and feedback, I should say. And this is, again, something that unfortunately, I know me, and as being a special educator, we see this a lot, and it's generally a concern that parents have. We talked about also difficulties with inclusion related to academic expectations, particularly at the middle school and high school level. So concerns around just what is expected of students who have 504 or have IEPs, and the level of challenge that is given to them. Let's see, and then lastly, around that note of inclusion and high academic expectations, there was concern about students with IEPs being publicly put on lists that have stated their disability status. An example provided there was during periods when there is no sub available on the lunchroom sign-in sheets, and I believe this is at the high school and middle school. There's a publicly listed, there was a space on the sign-in sheets that publicly had a student's IEP status on it. So this was just one concrete example that I would hope we'd be able to find an easy solution to. So Dr. Suska definitely took copious notes on that, but certainly that feedback was helpful to know as well for us at the board level. Then we moved on to, I'm sorry, my mouse just jumped out of the area. One second, let me get back to where I am. Okay. The last area that, or bucket area, I should say, from a parent feedback related to equitable access to dyslexia services. So this is a concern that many families have regarding their child's struggles with reading, and especially in terms of being able to get evaluations. So again, just this issue of parents finding that their child may be reading maybe 1 or 2 grade levels below and still not qualifying for an evaluation to determine whether they would be able to receive special education services. And again, we're wealthier families or families who have the abilities or means to be able to do outside independent evaluations are able to, but then again, this also creates an equity issue. So, again, just parents saying they reported repeated requests for dyslexia and dysgraphia evaluations being denied until they went outside for an evaluation independently, or they brought in an advocate, and then they were able to see better results in terms of getting an evaluation for their student. And then lastly, in that note, there was a concern about also only having one multisensory reading interventionist in the district at this point. Parent feedback is positive around the impact of that intervention, but noting that some students with IEPs are unable to access the intervention, I think more so about scheduling concerns. So yeah, we had a very rich conversation, a lot of discussion points here that we went into depth on. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the discussion that we had as a committee after the presentation. Some of the I think the input that then Dr. Suska provided was obviously taking copious notes, but also reminding us that the Compengo, is that how you pronounce it? I never get it right. Comengo Consulting, yeah, every time I say it differently. Comengo Consulting Group, who is working on the special education evaluation. They are in the process of reviewing documents and waiting for a few more documents to be reviewed. So that process is ongoing. We're not suggesting that some of the concrete items that are low-lying fruit that was brought to our attention cannot be addressed in the meantime. But Dr. Suska did offer an update on that, that work that Comengno is doing. We discussed a partnership with CPAG at the board level and equity and excellence in particular, but also in terms of, and I did offer up curriculum and instruction as well as another venue for CPAG to sort of collaborate and have board level discussions, particularly because issues around, for example, the co-teaching model or inclusion practices really do fall more directly under the realm of curriculum instruction. So thinking about how we can continue to sustain these discussions and really put forward and hear about concrete actions and the impact of those actions around those areas of concerns. Sometimes the issues may fall under curriculum instruction more closely, and sometimes they may align more closely with equity and excellence. But the bottom line in that discussion is we do want to see, and I think we all agree that we do want to continue meeting with CPAG periodically to have a more close working relationship and to see that happen in both curriculum instruction and excellence. And then we talked about, I'm sorry, I'm just going to try to get down here. Some of the questions that arose out of the presentation specifically were around what is the district done to educate parents on the 504 and IEP transition and processes. And so I think a concrete next step we talked about was thinking about putting together an infographic, a FAQ resource for parents, really pushing that out, doing a parent workshop with presenting SPED processes. Dr. Suska talked about definitely wanting to go forward with that in the fall. So we really agree that it's important to get the information out there, provide clarity, and also just make sure that internally, as Dr. Suska talked about, just kind of removing any sort of silos in the system so that there's more collaboration, communication, and understanding around these processes, even from, like I said, internally. So just kind of closing the gap on those areas of information and streamlining the information sharing process as well. I think that pretty much does it. Let me just see. Lastly, CPAG did express that they do want to be involved in the transition process with the new director of ed services and having broader conversations with all the bodies that will be included in that process. And that wraps up, I think, my summary of that significant portion of our meeting, significant in a good way. So we dedicated 30 minutes to our first half an hour of our meeting to CPAG. It was a very rich discussion, and we went over by like 5 minutes. And I think we were all left out of there feeling positive, I think, about the results and next steps, coming out with some tangible items that we really want to see going forward in terms of more information and a parent workshop in the fall, and then some periodic meetings with CPAG in the future. So next topic we talked about was our law enforcement policy 9320, which we talked about before. The committee has, Dr. Suska presented to the committee that Strauss the Bush law firm did recommend that we should keep Strauss's policy and adopt all the regulations as it does match the code and requirements of the regulation as we sort of talked about before. Dr. Suska also discussed that our safety plan does already mirror the law enforcement MOU. So we are, in alignment there. We have to be. So on that note, the committee did agree to move forward with first reading. But we also talked about keeping on our radar the concerns around the police interviewing of students when it comes to, incidents that rise to that level. So we did talk about some possible professional development opportunities around that issue as well. Then we talked about policy 5516, regulation 5516 around use of electronic communication devices. I don't think I have a whole lot to add to what was already stated. Let me just see if there were any points that equity and excellence raised that we didn't already discuss in curriculum instruction. Yeah, I think everything here was covered. I'm sorry, I just want to make sure I don't leave anything out. We did have a pretty lengthy discussion about the onus for taking students' phones lying on staff's hands. And of course, as I think Ethan mentioned, we would hope that that wouldn't happen frequently, but it's going to happen. So I think our concern was just around the burden that will place on the shoulders of teachers, and also kind of the tension that could also create between the teachers and students, and that, kind of that relationship. So we also had questions around how the decision was made to have staff or teachers take the device away from students when they're found to have them and they're not supposed to, as opposed to administration. So, we're going to continue to discuss this, and I know Dr. Suska is going to get back to us on sort of those decisions. We talked about I think that's it. I think that's all we talked about that we didn't already say. I'm sorry. I'm just making sure that I'm not being redundant here. Yes, we talked about the storage system already. Yes, considering the cost benefit analysis. Yes, 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 yes. Okay. And moving right along, we talked also briefly. Oh, we didn't talk briefly. We're done. That's it. Sorry. Sorry. Yeah, no, we did. Yeah, you're shaking. Yeah. I know. Yes. That's all. I'm sorry. Any questions?
Very quick, because I know it's getting late, guys. Don't get mad at me. So it's been an interesting point where we've kind of worked with CPAG and understanding what their priorities are, and we're a little bit waiting for Comengo, because I think part of what will come jointly together is like what those big rocks are that we can. But you had mentioned some of the low hanging fruit, and I know there's the presentation and that, but was there other things that were surfaced that were some of the low hanging fruit things that we could? I'm just curious. Maybe that's for
I think the main thing was just the kind of the communication around the processes and like really putting together that infographic, pushing out that, preparing for PT in the fall. Am I missing anything about other low lines?
Addressing the student identification, like, where students are listed.
Oh, yeah.
Fair enough. That sounds good.
Yeah, but we're excited about moving forward with just working together and, really seeing these areas addressed. Any other questions, comments, concerns? Okay, thank you.
Finance and facilities.
I don't have as many notes as you do, so it won't be as long, but I have a lot of we had a lot of things discussed. So we met on the 11th, and it was Anne, myself, and Dan joined us, and that was his first finance meeting. He told us it was riveting. So of course, Dr. Suska, and Mr. Rhoda, and John Flanagan were there as well. Some of the main action items, which I'll come to that in a minute, the agenda, the usual reports. We're going to be voting on breakfast and lunch prices, which are no increase for next school year. There's a item on there about our property casualty insurance. And I believe that we have a 14% increase in our property casualty insurance. And we're looking to add, Mr. Rose has been looking to add a crisis management policy has been recommended, which is an additional $5,000, and will cover the district in the event of damage and other costs when there's a crisis in the in the district, because in fact, we did not have coverage for that in the past. So that's on the agenda. There's going to be all of our contracts we're approving in a blanket. One of the bigger items that we've talked about, and there's been some conversation since about, is the Bartle bathroom renovation. So at this point, we've gone out to bid 3 times, and to get at least one boys' bathroom renovated in Bartle. And the first time the bid ultimately was withdrawn, and a second time we got no bids. This time we have 3 bids. And we had 3, on the third time we had bids come in. They were all over budget. There'll be a read-in tonight about that topic. And the lowest bid was still significantly over our budget. So our budget that we had budgeted 120,000, and if I got something wrong here, Denise, just stop me. But we had budgeted 120,000 for the job. The lowest bid came under at 196,579. So the way we have extra money, we have money potentially to do that job, it would be because the Irving Foundation project came in significantly under what we budgeted. We budgeted 130,000 and the project cost 30,000. So one option we have is to go ahead and accept the lowest bid and use the additional money from the Irving Foundation project to complete the Bartle bathroom renovation. Or we can not do that, right? And that money then would go back into capital reserves. So that's one thing that we will be on the agenda tonight to discuss. So yeah, we will probably come back to that, but that was one of the items we talked about. The other thing we talked about is before and aftercare, some of the updates in the before and aftercare program. So at that point, there had been a preliminary meeting for a pre-submission meeting, and we did get 5 companies came in to show interest in the RFP for the after-school program. And there were follow-up questions even after our pre-submission meeting. So we're hopeful that we'll get some proposals. And there's a committee that has been set up to review those proposals. And I think we're hoping to do a July 10th meeting to make a final decision about the RFP for the after-school program. I think that's all I had on that. We looked at the continued concern about the budget of the after-school program. We looked at the financials. Because of the increase in cost of some of our substitutes from our substitute program. So our loss on that has gone up a little bit. And in fact, the subsidies, at that point, we didn't have any additional subsidies, or very few students had been approved for subsidies. So that area continues to be a significant concern. We had a preliminary conversation about the co-curricular out-of-state field trips with some of the numbers that Denise had gathered, but there was a lot of work still to be done on that. So we talked about the cost of insurance, some of the things that we discussed already at length earlier. So no, I don't need to do that. And I won't do the cell phone policy. We also had that conversation, but any suggestions we made have already moved forward. So all good there. Last, under facilities, let's see what we got. John reported on the baseball field project that's on schedule. There's a meeting with the boosters about changes to the bleachers. So I think that's all moving along well, considering also the boosters are considering making a change to the front gate, but all that's going along well. The concrete to dugout will be poured at the end of June. The Bartle structural repair, the formerly the walkway area, have set their plan to work to remove the old boilers and start putting in supports to get that moving along over the summertime. The greenhouse project had to go back out to bid. So that's still not yet moving forward. The other thing that John brought up that was new, which will be a read-in on the agenda tonight, is that there are chemicals stored at the high school in the science department that need to be disposed of. They've been around way too long, and there's chemicals that should not be in our buildings for that length of time. So at that point, he was looking at vendors to come in and do a bid for removal, and that is on our agenda, which will be a read-in shortly. And I think that's it for my notes. Yeah, questions or?
I have a
questions on
quick
that?
question about the chemicals.
Yeah.
Is it at least once a year, maybe twice a year, we have free hazardous waste removal in Highland Park? I wonder if we could partner with DPW on that.
I have no idea. I know there was a whole there. I know he was talking about the need, how you get it out of the building, something about you get. Yeah, it's very specific.
Yeah, these are really specific chemicals. They're not like normal, like household waste
I think it might be the quantity involved.
chemicals
the
and
leak,
quantity and
how it can be taken out of our building.
It
yeah.
also includes the relining of a pit, a chemical pit that we have. So
Yeah.
the sinks
Yes.
don't just drain into our regular water system.
have to do these.
They go into a pit. So that needs to be
A little more complex.
Yeah, it's a little bit more complicated. Yeah.
moved and relined.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And actually, I realized I didn't do the agenda items, so. let me-
Okay.
not-
Go back and do the agenda.
Let's go back to this. So, questions?
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so on our agenda, we have the bill list through the end of June, through June 23rd, travel and related expenses, all of our usual. The treasurer's report is through the end of May, as is the board secretary's report. All our typical certifications and budget transfers. We have approval for the transfer of unexpended appropriations and excess revenue to reserves. So that's moving money to transfer to our capital reserve account and into maintenance reserves. We have a sort of a blanket approval. It's all of our awarded contracts. And if you look at the agenda, it's a very long list of what areas we are approving. We have the breakfast and lunch prices with the no, actually a little bit of an increase here. Price and variable price, what's the difference on that?
There should be no increase.
What is that down? As I'm skidding, I thought there was no increase.
Variable prices for students that pick a alternate lunch.
Oh,
like,
okay, so something
It's
different.
a higher end lunch, I guess. So if
Okay.
you want sushi, there's a variable price.
Okay, but our
what
typical
they get
price is the
charged
same.
to.
Okay, it just struck my eye. Approval of contracted service providers and related services. We are adding a wrestling clinic for 6th through 12th graders. There's a non-public pass-through for contractors for professional development and handle with care for our staff through behavior management services. Contracted service providers for the Ed Services Department. And then all of our out-of-district placements for the 25-26 school year are listed here. Contract renewal for our cafeteria software program and support for the cafeteria POS, point of service system. Installation of an oven, purchase installation of an oven in the middle school. And then our approval to renew insurances for the 25-26 school year. And you have a list here to review. Our school-based youth service contract we are voting on. We are voting on 3 non-resident students to attend Highland Park High School for next school year. And those are students who will be paying tuition, and the tuition is listed here. 2 McKinney-Vento students who are going to be attending school in New Brunswick. And then we have 2 read-ins, which will be number 20 is this recording an award of bids for the toilet room alteration at Bartle Elementary School. And do I need to read all the numbers and everything on this? I do, okay. I move that the Board of Education accept the recommendation of the superintendent to approve the recording and award of bids received for the toilet room alteration at Bartle Elementary School, bid number 2024-25, as follows. So it says that we got through Arista Builders and Designers. Their base bid was $330,000. Everybody also gave a bid for a girls' bathroom alteration. That was $300,000. The total for the Arista would have been $630 for both bathrooms. Ciprico had their base bid was $196,579, and they had an alternate bid for the girls' room for $149,000, totaling $345,579. J.H. Williams Enterprise, their base bid was $227,000. Their girls' bathroom was $157,000, total $384,000. And coming from Salazar and Associates was a base bid of $248,900. I'm sorry, it's a really long day. Their alternate bid was $145,000 for the girls' room, totaling $393,900. So be it resolved, the board award the base bid to Ciprico Industries in the amount of $196,579. So that's number 21. That's number 20. Number 21 is approval of proposal to provide hazardous waste management services. I move the Board of Education accept the recommendation of the superintendent to approve the proposal from Old Colony Group LLC to provide hazardous waste management services to the Highland Park High School in the amount of $29,001.79, covered under the Ed Data Cooperative Bid 12182. And that actually is the end of the Finance Facilities Report. And now, if there are no questions.
I have one quick question about the McKinney-Vento students.
Yeah.
I understand how that works for the most part, but I thought it was generally when the districts were a little bit further away. So I'm just wondering how it works out that they're just going to New Brunswick, which is so close, instead of here. Did you help me understand that?
So if there's a student that has that is McKinney-Vento, by law, they have a choice. They either can remain in the district, their last district of residence, which would have been Highland Park, or they can attend where they're living. So it's their choice. If they choose to continue in Highland Park, then we're responsible fiscally. If they choose to attend another school district, then we're responsible fiscally for their tuition and transportation. Either, yeah.
Okay.
Same goes for other McKinney-Vento students from other LEAs that are surrounding. We bill them for tuition. Gotcha.
Thank you.
I just want to clarify the Bartle bathroom.
Yeah, I realize there's some more things I should add about.
Yeah,
that.
so the decision that we have to make tonight is whether or not we award this bid over budget. Now, the money that would be used over budget is from another project that came in under budget, but this type of money, which is from capital reserve, can only be used for capital reserve projects. Okay, so it can't be used for anything else. So we kind of have a tough decision because this is the third bid that's gone out for this bathroom. We've been talking for the bathrooms a long time. The kids really want the bathroom.
That's what I meant to add, right?
You know, and all of the things that they ranked as priorities at the school, the bathrooms were one of them, but it is a lot of money to spend on one bathroom. I know that John had said that the water retention or like the standing water problems that had existed in the bathroom have been remedied, but that issues pop up maybe every other month where there will still be standing water that they have to
It's because
deal
of a
with.
snake that's stuck in a drain.
Yeah.
That's just cause
So anyway.
periodic backups.
Any thoughts on this?
I feel a little bad that it's only the boys' bathroom, not the girls as well, that we can't
Yeah.
do both of them because all of the students were looking for a new bathroom. So I feel a little funny about only awarding it to the boys.
That has been the
bathroom.
plan. That was the worst one. And that's
Yeah.
what, you know,
That was always-
obviously the goal would be to try to do, you know, one a year, 2 a year, ultimately we get to a referendum some years, but I think Dee said there were 12 bathrooms or John said or something. So there's a lot, it's, you know, the facilities are old, you know, our schools are old and They need to
So
be
we can't promise to
maintained.
do another one next year. That's already kind of
No,
done.
that's all right. We didn't
We could
budget
do
for that next year because
potentially
how
this
tight
one
money, how
and
tight
then-
money is, right? So it's, it's you know, it's a challenge.
But again, it's not out of the operating budget. Just to clarify to everyone,
right.
this is not extra money
No, it's
that
capital
could
reserve.
go into the operating budget to fund other priorities. This is a separate budget for capital projects that we can't even just decide to spend one day. You have to plan
To spend it.
Right,
spend
we've
it.
worked on this for a while. It's not going to get cheaper, as we all know. and That's a problem, right?
So I
don't-
did
Denise-
bring a copy of all the bids. The first bid we received, which the bidder withdrew, was 129,000. And included in the bids is an allowance of $30,000. So if the contractor doesn't utilize the allowance of $30,000, it would come off the base bid. The second bid we received came in at $251,500. So that was completely over budget. And then the third time we went out to bid, we actually got 4 bidders. But if you look like the skew of numbers, it's high. It's higher than we budgeted. We prepared the budget, you know,
Well,
in
2 years.
in the
Yeah.
spring, you know, late winter, early spring of the year prior. So it just is a indication of that prices are increasing. And we all see that, right? So,
Question, oh, sorry. Question, if we were to not approve it, where would those, is there another option for where those monies go? I mean, from
the
a,
monies get by statute have to get deposited back into capital reserve to be utilized for future projects. So
and then, okay, and
the
there's the,
projects this year out of capital reserve are the Bartle Walkway and the pre-K alteration of the cafeteria to add a pre-K classroom. That is all that we can do in the 25-26 school year. So when these monies get deposited and hopefully additional deposits we can make, as you see on the agenda, we have to approve up to those amounts to be deposited in capital reserve, maintenance reserve, and emergency reserve. So if we can add more money to those reserves, then in next year, when we plan for the 26-27 budget, we could plan to look at what items of maintenance and capital improvement projects we want to tackle. This was a really important item last school year because of the standing water. But we were connected with a certain company that had a video scope and could remove the items that were caught in the drain. But as Allison mentioned, about every other month, John has mentioned that there is a sludge that comes from the drain specifically in this bathroom because there is a drain snake that is clogging the drain. And this bid would include the replacement of the drains. It also has in it a preparation for the other bathroom, which is on the girls' side. So if we were to do that in the future, those pipes and those would be there in the walls because they have to remove all the walls. There's asbestos in the tile, and not the tile itself, but the grout, I guess, has asbestos in it, so there will be some asbestos removal that goes along with it. That's probably what drove the price
so
really high was the asbestos removal.
Because that was the issue with the first bid year ago, is that they didn't include asbestos. That's why they
Correct.
withdrew their bid.
Correct. That's why
I
they
just
would
remember
remember
they
their
said that,
bid,
yeah.
129,000, because they said they did not include the asbestos removal within the bid.
so the question really is, if we were to not do this and apply this to other capital projects, there's also the same risk that things are going to be more expensive because they're just more expensive today than they were a year ago. So that's really it's a risky in a sense.
In a way, but at first glance, I think my first inclination was that's a lot of money and perhaps we can gain economies of scale if we had additional monies to do more. But the future is the future, I can't predict labor costs. I can't predict the cost of asbestos removal and the cost of fixtures. The fixtures are expensive as well. So
I do have a question along those lines, though, because if we were to, because part of this project has to do with replacing the pipes and preparing to do the girls' bathroom as well, which, the complaints are about both bathrooms. The boys' bathroom just happens to be worse, but those two bathrooms are a major problem at Bartle. And, you know, this idea that we can do the girls' bathroom later, but then that price is going to go up. And you're also doing a smaller job because it's the one bathroom. Theoretically, if we're not talking about pushing it 5 years forward, but if we don't do the boys' bathroom now and then plan to do both bathrooms at the same time, wouldn't that be more cost effective? Theoretically, it's the
In theory,
future.
yeah, in theory it could, you know, but even like the alternate bid for the girls, just the girls alone, the savings is roughly $45,000, right? A difference.
Because, right,
It
because
still
they
costs
put in
149,000
yeah.
to do the girls' room. So
But if you were doing the girls on its own,
it
would
could be
these
higher,
together?
right?
So if we were doing the bid for the girls on its own, theoretically, it could be much higher.
It could.
So do we know that if fixing the boys' bathroom type situation, would that actually maybe reduce some of the issue in the girls' bathroom?
I don't know the issue in the girls' bathroom other than
It's old.
the old and smelly. Yeah, old and smelly.
It's old and smelly. and
They're
needs to be
off.
redone.
Any of the bathrooms are that way.
Yeah.
about
Full
this.
transparency, I think there's bathrooms at the high school that need to be remodeled as well. And bathrooms are expensive. Yeah, the two boys bathroom at Bartle became a huge concern in the 23-24 school year because of the standing water. It's a health hazard.
Yeah.
And we wanted to address it then. So that's why it was included in the budget.
And just to be clear, so the standing water issue is an ongoing issue. Okay, and that no other bathrooms that have.
Not constant.
Mhm.
It was constant.
It was
fixed in one of
issue.
Every
Yeah.
day.
Yeah.
Like maybe we'll-
So
Yeah.
there's still the snake in there though, so that's why it's causing some of that issue, that has to be removed.
But we were able to remove some of the stuff that was
Some of the
causing the
problems,
problem.
Mhm.
So, yes.
Would that also be included in the remediation, the bathroom?
Of this particular bathroom, that pipe would be replaced, but we cannot remove the snake without demoing the floor. Right, so we have to redo the bathroom to remove the snake. And I realized when I wrote that, I was like, I hope they don't think it's a real snake.
Snake or a dead snake, it's a plumber snake.
Imagining the Star
that
Wars snake.
We are definitely.
It was not at one time a live organism.
Yeah.
It wasn't very, okay.
Oh, it's my turn.
Yes.
Okay. Oh, Seth, you had a question about trips.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, I just had a quick thing. We can save it till the end, though. It's not a question, it's more of a comment. And if you want to continue with your report, that's fine.
Okay. All right, I will. If I had the momentum. But because I would also like to clarify some things later on too. So in old business, would that be okay?
Yeah, I think I can do my thing in old business.
Okay, personnel. Number one is the approval of withholding salary increment for an employee. Number two is the approval of the reappointments of Highland Park administrators. Number three is the reappointment of the residency specialist for the next school year. Number four is the reappointment of the HPEA 12-month Schedule G staff. Number five is approval of reappointment of our teacher associates. Number six is the approval of education, Board of Ed appointments. So Dr. Mortarello and Dr. Ressa, who we hired at a previous meeting, now fill these particular positions. Then number seven is the approval of leave of absences for 2 employees. Number 8 is the approval of appointments. Some notable ones include Michelle Rodriguez will now be our Executive Director of Curriculum and Instruction. We have Angelo continuing to support tech for the Board of Ed meetings. We have lots of staff volunteering for freshman orientation. Thank you so much. Well, I shouldn't say volunteering. They're working as a freshman orientation, but thank you anyway, because who wants to work in the summer? We have some office and classroom moves. We have movement on the guide for 3 employees who got their doctorates and 1 employee who got their masters. We have a new guidance counselor for the middle school, Michael Spino. And then we also have a part-time art teacher for Irving, Erica Martone Rocha. And then we have a read-in. Oh, and we also have an elementary teacher for Bartle School, Hannah Mendez, who will start in late September. And then we do have a read-in, and this is for Derek, Dr. Ressa. We had previously approved him on an interim contract, which was per diem per day. And the reason that we did that, and I kind of want to answer Karen's question from before, the reason we did an interim was there was not enough time to have a full hiring process, search, committee, all of that. And we wanted to be really intentional with the approach we took to hiring the director. And we also wanted to wait until the Comegno evaluation was finished because obviously if they determine our needs, we want to look for somebody who really shines in those areas. And since then, what we've done actually is offered this 1-year contract to Dr. Ressa. So he will be committed to us for 1 year, which affords us more time for that process and also will provide some consistency for the school year. So he has taken that. So thank you very much, Dr. Ressa. And we will do like the full hiring process after the Comegno report, which includes, focus groups. Well, that came out of the Comegno report, but includes, including caregivers on our committees, students, we do a really nice hiring process. So we'll do the whole shebang. Number 9, the approval of transfers of note. Mr. DePayne is going to be moving to be AP at the high school, and Dr. Richardson is going to be moving to be AP at the middle school. We have approval of all of the 2025-2026 Schedule B positions as listed. So those are many. We have approval of summer staff, approval of nursing staff, twice. Why? Oh, one's for school physicals and one is for registration. And then we have approval of the job coach stipend for 2 employees for the STAR program. We have approval of staff for summer CST and IEP meetings. There's a lot of those staff members. Okay. We have approval of staff translators. We have many of those too, which is awesome. We have approval of changes for staff for 2025 for the STAR program, the summer STAR program. And you can see those. Did I? Page 29. Which one did I? Oh, Paris. Oh, that's important. Okay, so 16 was the approval of extra compensation for school nurses. 17 was the approval of home instruction staff. And then 18 is the approval of reappointment for our wonderful paraprofessionals for the next school year. Okay. 19 was staff translators. 20 was approval of the staff changes for the STAR program. 21 is approval of changes. Did I miss something again? No. Oh, 21 was the approval of changes of toileting stipend for STAR paraprofessionals. And then 22 is the approval of educational services staff travel for the 25-26 school year. 23 is the approval of summer curriculum writing. And 24 is the approval of interns and practicum students for the teen center. Okay. Then for policy and regulation, the policy and reg for electronic communication devices and for cooperation with law enforcement agencies are going for first reading. And that's it. And that's it. And that's it. Okay. Any questions about either of those that I can answer? All right, cool. So now we're going to move to board action item. No, we're going to move to public comment. I'm sorry. It's like after 8 p.m., my mind melts. Public comment number 2, the Highland Park Board of Education welcomes public participation and has reserved this time for your comments. There's nobody here. Oh, no, okay. I didn't mean nobody, Miss Susan.
We appreciate you being here.
It was a very crowded room before. Is there anybody online for public comment? You can raise your hand. Maxwell Fan, go ahead.
Oh, sorry if I missed this earlier. I just wanted to ask, I know in the last board meeting, finance and facilities discussed having a vote on competitive contracting versus, I'm assuming, lowest bidder. What is the results on that, or what policy has been adapted now? Sorry if I missed this.
I believe you're talking about the RFP for the before and after care program.
Yeah.
Yeah, the proposals are due tomorrow. So nothing has been awarded to
No, but the
date.
difference between competitive.
Oh, what the difference is?
Between the process that we chose.
Oh, no,
So-
that's fine. I think I got the difference. I just wanted to ask like what decision was made, but yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
Oh.
Okay. Anybody else for public comment? Lily Solomon.
Hi, thank you
Hi,
so much
Lily.
for doing this. I know that there was a public comment earlier and a lot of other students and former students spoke about this, but I kind of just wanted to add on and talk about my experience with DECA and how it really shaped my high school career. I graduated, but I was involved in DECA throughout all 4 years, and it seriously made my high school experience more academic and taught me so many skills that I wouldn't have learned otherwise through just taking classes and following a curriculum. I think DECA is the first time I ever wrote a real paper, and for that matter, a 20-page paper, and really had to work together with a team to create something that was our own. And then we were able to present those things, and it really was just an experience that I think was so beneficial and taught me so much. And without having that sort of end of the year trip to nationals where you get to see all your work come together, there's not much of an incentive to join clubs like DECA or Model UN or other clubs that have really big out of state trips. So it's sort of unfortunate that these programs are at risk of being cut because so many students benefit from them. And also, as a student who recently went through the college application process, I can definitely say that being able to show that I competed and placed at a national level helped me get into business schools that are pretty competitive and that I'm now attending in the fall. So I think without experiences like that, schools are less inclined to accept students from Highland Park because it just shows that you've been able to learn these skills through a club like DECA or Model UN. And without these national competitions, it sort of devalues the clubs and makes students less inclined to join, and also gives students sort of less of a resume or things to show to college admissions. So yeah, I just wanted to say that. Thank you so much. And I hope this helps you guys with your decision.
Thank you, Lily. Anybody else on Zoom for public comment? Rebecca?
Hi there. I know I spoke before, but I just wanted to add one thing. Oh, Rebecca Hirsch, 331 Felton Avenue. I wanted to add, a number of community members submitted a letter that's on the board agenda outlining the real importance of these programs and the importance of these opportunities. And I just forgot to add that now we're up to 360 community members who have signed onto this letter. So the community really, really cares about these programs, and about a third of those signatories are students. Highland Park High School is quite small. To get 100 kids to sign on to something like this is a big deal. So a big portion of the student body also really, really cares about this. So I just wanted to put those numbers out there. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Libby?
Hello. So my name is Libby Peckman. I'm a rising junior. And to the issue with the cell phones, I agree that cell phone usage is a big problem in our school. And it becomes harder to make friends with people and interact with people and further on our education when we have cell phones. I think that's not a point that many students of my age would take, but I think that a good way that could combat this, maybe uh, in addition to um, a physical a physical barrier to our phones, or maybe instead of, would be more education on how students to teach students to interact with our phones, especially since when you're given as a 16-year-old, right, given a phone at a young age, right, I myself have found out that it's become harder for me to live without my phone, and I even do a lot of my schoolwork on my own phone, and I found myself relying on my phone to do schoolwork, especially this year, and it has helped me a lot. So some further education on living with not living with doing school and just how to, like doing things without phones, right, for students, I think would be pretty helpful.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Did he say no? No other hands? Oh, so.
Oh, we do?
Oh. Alex, go ahead.
Hello, I'm Alex Yu. I spoke earlier. I have a different point to bring about. Uh, and it's a topic that hasn't really been brought out today in the board meeting, but I would like to quickly bring this up because it's not a lot of effort. Um, so I know that our school has banned the usage of ChatGPT and other AI tools on our Chromebooks, and I feel like if phones are going to be banned or, definitely withheld in the duration of class. I feel like the usefulness of AI tools should not be understated, especially in the next era of, our generation. We should be taught to use AI tools correctly in class because I feel it would greatly help our education. Personally, I've used ChatGPT to organize my summer really well. Uh, and it's made me feel a lot better going into the summer than any other summer at this point. And I feel like if used correctly, ChatGPT could greatly induce a better learning experience for every student. Uh, and for AI helping cheating, that problem is actually really easily addressed because there are many AI tools out there that can notice usages of AI in homework. So, you know, just off the top of my head, I can think of like four. So I think that should be not as much of a concern compared to like allowing the usage of AI in terms of helping students rather than just only thinking about the consequences of AI making students more likely to cheat. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Is there anybody else for public comment? Libby?
Hi, Ben. I'm sorry. I just want to add to my point. I agree that there are things that are blocked on our Chromebooks, and that is also one of the things that I've been using my phone for in class. And there's not it's not a quick system to get things unblocked in your Chromebooks. Like, things have to be blocked. Obviously, I don't necessarily agree with ChatGPT. While I do agree that artificial intelligence should slowly be introduced into our education, I think that is not something that would be. It had to be carefully thought through, and I'm not sure if allowing ChatGPT is the most intelligent idea, but there are things that are blocked on our Chromebooks that we can only access with our phones, and that would have to be taken into account also with a cell phone ban. Thank you.
Thank you, Libby. Any other hands? All right. And with no other hands raised, we're going to close public comment. We're going to move to board action items, curriculum and instruction. You may begin.
I move 1 through, I think it's 11.
Second?
Ms. Cassel Dunn.
Yes.
Am I right?
What am I supposed to say? Yes. Yes.
Aye.
Okay,
Yes.
here. Dr. Coleman,
Yes.
Dr. Pixley,
Yes.
Ms. Bruce,
Yes.
Dr. Schoolman,
Yes.
Ms. Stanio,
Yes.
Ms. Bardman,
Yes.
Ms. Voorhees.
Yes.
Finance and facilities.
I move items 1 through 19 plus the 2 read-ins, which are 20 and 21.
I don't want to go first.
Oh, this is the bathroom.
Any second?
Oh, second.
We're tired.
Ms. Cassel Dunn,
Yes.
Dr. Coleman,
Yes.
Dr. Pixley,
This is momentous. We've
Yeah,
never had
I
something
would
we've
say no to the
voted.
bathroom.
So no
Whatever.
to 20.
No to 20.
Ms. Bruce,
Yes.
Dr. Schoolman,
Yes.
Ms. Stanio,
Yes, but abstain from 13.
Ms. Bardman,
Yes, abstain from 13 and no on 20.
Ms. Voorhees.
No on 20, yes to everything else.
Motion carries.
Okay. For personnel, I'd like to move numbers 1 through 24.
Second?
Ms. Cassel Dunn,
Yes.
Dr. Coleman,
Yes.
Dr. Pixley,
Yes.
Ms. Bruce,
Yes.
Dr. Schoolman,
Yes.
Ms. Stanio,
Yes.
Ms. Bardman,
Yes.
Ms. Voorhees.
Yes.
And for policies and regulations, I'd like to move number 1,
A through D.
A through D.
Second. Oh, thank you.
Ms. Cassel Dunn,
Yes.
Dr. Coleman,
Yes.
Dr. Pixley,
Yes.
Ms. Bruce,
Yes.
Dr. Schoolman,
Yes.
Ms. Stanio,
Yes.
Ms. Bardman.
Yes.
How about me?
Oh. Ms. Voorhees.
I mean, I don't know. I'm not sure now. Yes.
They're not late night people, at least not for meetings.
I think that we said you did.
Okay. Board liaison reports.
We have to mute somebody.
Okay. No liaison reports?
I-
Oh, do we have one?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's really quick. I just want to share. I got distracted. I'm sorry. No. I think somebody's speaker.
Oh, okay.
I just wanted to share that the Human Relations Commission got to meet with Dr. Suska and all the principals today from the schools to come up with some different ideas so they can collaborate and help each other out. So I thought it was a really exciting meeting. So I'm really positive and looking forward to see what happens.
Bringing it all together. So many connections. Anybody else?
I have a quick question from the Board of Health. And I may have even asked this already and forgot to take notes on it. Do you know who takes care of our lawn care here? They said it used to be the town that helped out with that. Do we have our own staff? And the main thing is that they're talking about the blowers not being gas powered anymore. So they were just wondering what's happening here currently. And if it's the town, then we're under one roof. But if we have our own service, just what we're doing with that.
We
So-
don't have, we contract with Pritchard for facilities management. So there is one grounds person that they employ for grounds worker.
Do you happen to know if they use
I
gas
believe
powered
it's a
blowers?
gas
Okay.
blower.
You have one? Oh, I just wanted to, since our last meeting, there were a couple of district events. There was the CPAG fundraiser, which was last Friday at Pino's, which was a Super Smash Bros tournament, which is awesome. Mikey Whiten won. And then also there was the Highland Park Athletic Boosters trivia night at Pino's, which was really fun. And it was great to see everybody there supporting both our, special education parent advisory group and the Highland Park Athletic Boosters. So.
And Dr. Susko is there, and I won a bag.
And I want a bag.
It was not rigged.
And I do have something to share actually on Dan's behalf is that the Commission for Universal Access requested a student rep, correct?
Yes.
So Dr. Donovan is going to work with Dr. Suska and that commission to get a student rep. Yes. Okay. I have no president's report. Old business.
Sorry, I have a family movie going on in the background.
Gotcha.
But I just wanted to very quickly say I'm grateful to all the students, especially who stayed up late tonight and gave us, shared their views. That was great to hear. And now I'll stop bothering everybody.
So I just wanted to, there were a few questions I jotted down that I think were quick to clarify. So one concern was that third-party agencies would not allow you to plan your own itinerary. And I don't think that's accurate.
Correct. That's not accurate.
Okay.
It would be your own itinerary, how you want to do it. They just facilitate the coordination of like planning the travel and the transportation and things like that. But they don't actually plan your trip. You plan the trip.
Okay. And it's also an option.
It is.
Like it's not.
It
a
may,
requirement.
right. It may be an option. We're exploring it to see if it would something that would work for us to help us theoretically with whatever the costs are, because we want to make them affordable for everybody. And this might be an option. So we're exploring that. Seth?
Yeah, so just one last thing on the topic of the overnight trips. So I mean, first I know, and this is something that's been discussed in the clubs, but there is, of course, a lot of cuts to education. So we do understand that there is some cuts being made to education everywhere. So this is something that's been going on. But just to discuss the importance of the overnight trips for these clubs one more time, I think something that wasn't brought up too much was the importance of these overnight trips for the recognition of the school. Like I know, just to start off with choir, when they go to things like Boston, I think last time they went, they won a lot of awards and they represented the school district very well. DECA, when they go to states and then when they go to nationals, they have people who win awards. And then Model UN, which I have the privilege of knowing more about because I'm an officer there, consistently win awards. We've won outstanding delegation when we went to Philadelphia. And when the Mexico trip happens, that's a conference that's the biggest in that country. And they ask us to come here because we consistently win awards there. And last time we went, we won the best delegation award. So I think it's something, I think normally when we think about, representing the school, we do it from a scope of athletics. I think that's also something that should be considered more from clubs, because a lot of our clubs, I think, do a really great job at representing this really small public school district. And typically when we go to these conferences and with these other clubs, we're competing against schools like East Brunswick, these group 4 schools that have a lot of our population. And secondly, I just wanted to talk about, I think, the importance of these clubs in terms of the image. a lot of people, I mean, including myself, when I was a freshman, joined these clubs because they kind of see in terms of the big picture, oh, we get to go on trips. And I think it was brought up a lot, but not having that to kind of advertise with will hurt the programs. And these are programs that are incredibly important. I know I've personally grown a lot. And I think also I've seen a lot of growth. A lot of the people that came and spoke were underclassmen that I've seen join the club and have gotten a lot better at public speaking that we saw today. Um, One last thing. Yeah, and I think it's just shows the importance of these clubs and these overnight trips that on a day like today, a lot of teenagers are taking time out of their day to advocate for education. I think that's also something that important that we recognize for the importance of these trips.
During summer break too.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's
School's
really
out.
impressive.
Very impressive.
I love it. Like, keep coming. Please.
There was another question about whether trip requests were in for 25, 26. And so we've only gotten one trip request, correct?
Correct. Yeah, no other
So-
ones have been submitted yet.
Okay.
We're at that point.
And then in terms of the administrator on the overnight out-of-state trips, that is now due to our change in board policy, which was made due to liability concerns, providing some more supervision on these trips, also providing some more, support, really.
Correct.
And in terms of the payment, we had to negotiate payment for work. You get paid for your services here, so we're going to compensate administrators who take time out of their very busy lives to join students on these trips. And teachers too. We do that also.
We do both.
We do both. But the administrator was a new one.
New
We
one.
had always compensated teachers. I think that was the quick questions.
I had a couple other that I thought could be clarified. So there were some questions around the precipice of this being because we weren't able to budget for certain trips. And my understanding is, I mean, really, it's because we had a budget shortfall and we had to think about how to close that gap strategically where we're not cutting programs, but programs that we can't be subsidized by families. So it wasn't that was kind of the catalyst. So that was one. And then the other question that came up that I thought was maybe worth a clarification too is the idea that this model, it's not necessarily, the purpose of this isn't to make more clubs have more trips. That's just a byproduct of moving to a model like this because it, absorbs the costs in a different way. So that's kind of like a kind of, that's what it seemed like to me. So I'm curious if that.
Yeah, but access and equity were also the focus on that. So in previous budgets, there were some line items for very specific groups to get operating budget to go. Other groups weren't afforded those line items. So when people were putting in, they're like, well, how come this group gets operating budget and our group does not? And so that then speaks to, and then when we looked at how much that was costing, there were conversations around that in terms of, sustaining other instructional items because there are other student fund models to be able to support trips. So just looking at those line items alone in a significant, budget crisis, we made that financial decision. A repercussion of that, when looking even deeper into that, is how do we make an equitable, sustained model so that anybody has the ability to access this without just saying we're only going to operating budget fund one or two organizations versus some other organizations. I really don't want to get too in the weeds. We can kind of talk offline, what that looks like and where that information is. But that's, because there's quite a little bit of history here too. But the reality is that it was part of conversation going back to December, where we were talking about the cost of the trips. And I know there's a lot of things that we want to fund in terms of going above and beyond, obviously, our legal mandates and the state requirements. We want to do more for our students, but the operating budget can only sustain so many things. But we also all agree collectively that these trips are of vital importance. As a teacher myself, I chaperoned and ran a number of trips. And the amazing things that happened, you can't replace that in a day-to-day classroom. but there's only so much money in the budget too. And when we're looking at making decisions for 1,600 kids, we have to figure out what those things are. And then again, as we unpacked it a little bit more, I was just thinking about it. I go, oh, there was a couple trips named on here that I'm not sure I have to look into now that weren't on our radar, that may now have to be on our radar. So a lot of this is just, we will get through it this summer. I am committed to making sure by the end of the summer, we have a sustainable model that everybody can access if they want to. I think that's really important to say to an organization, I'm sorry, but we can't fund it because we're funding only these particular ones? Or is it the board wanting to have a conversation about maybe there are guidelines on what they fund if you want to fund things? So those are conversations we all need to have around this idea of what it looks like.
Yeah, and in the context of a smaller budget and increasing insurance costs.
Yes,
So,
right, that's the reality.
We need to be.
That's the
flexible.
reality. Yeah, that's the reality.
Okay. Any other old business? Okay, new business. Okay, I move we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Good, everybody.
Good night, everyone.